go like and subscribe. Do it now.
And welcome back to the latest and greatest episode of the Shaving Points podcast. My name is Jake May. You can find me on Twitter at JMay56. Joined as always by my co-host, Quentin Crisco. Find him on Twitter at Bucketstats. And tonight, as we talk NFC North, we're joined by the legend himself, Brad Spielberger. You can find him on Twitter at PFFBrad. How are we doing tonight, boys?
I'm doing good,
fantastic.
but let's
Sorry,
go to the
go
guest. Okay, I'm doing good. I think we had a little bit of a lag there, so we both started talking at once. But Brad, how's your night going?
It's going great. I appreciate you guys having me on, and appreciate the far too kind introduction.
Yeah, absolutely. And if you guys haven't checked out Brad's work over at PFF, it's awesome stuff. The contract projections, the free agent profiles he puts out every year, and he's writing articles all the time, it seems like, over there. And Brad, are you still contributing over at Over the Cap? Or is that...
Yeah, as much as I can. Yeah, I mean, it's really a labor of love for the guys over there. It's just no one makes money off it. Bunch of dudes who just love the NFL. So, yeah, I'll put in contracts that come across. If I get details, I'll edit stuff on there.
Okay.
Yeah. The man is followed by Adam Schefter, so...
That was pretty cool. That has not lost its luster at all. And I don't know why this just ties into the show. For whatever reason, I've never interacted with him on Twitter except for one time. He tweeted about the Bears signing. Why am I blanking on his name now? The backup quarterback from Carolina, PJ Walker. And I put out the video of PJ Walker throwing like the bomb to DJ Moore, and I was like, Bears, the reunion in Chicago, and for some reason he quote tweeted me on that. So
love that.
It's good stuff, man. Anytime you can get a quote tweet from Shefty. But why don't we jump into our main segment here? We're doing the NFC North today, and Brad, we know you're a big Bears fan. I feel your pain. I understand it. But so we always start this off asking, what's the state of the team through your eyes? So what do you see the state of the Bears as?
It did take a big step forward this offseason, no question about it. Obviously, coming in with the first overall pick with the most cap space in the NFL, you knew they were going to make moves. I think for me, obviously, the splash moves, you go out, you get DJ Moore, you get that legit number one receiver that I think has such a massive effect, not only individually, but also making life easier for Darnell Mooney, Chase Claypool, the tight ends, etc. On defense, the back seven looks interesting, looks talented, looks fast, looks physical. But for me, and I don't think this is anti-analytics per se, but maybe it's not the most analytical thing. I am a football is won and lost in the trenches guy, probably always will be. That's how I view the game. I think everything else, obviously matters. You can scheme around things, but at the end of the day, I think if you're getting whooped in the trenches, it's hard to win football games. And I kind of think they're going to get whooped in the trenches a couple times this year.
Yeah, I understand that sentiment or that feeling. But so on a bit more optimistic note, what's something on this roster that you're really excited for?
I think the multiplicity they have on offense now with so many different weapons. So again, not just adding the top end talent, but for me now, they were 26th in 12 personnel last year. I think that will skyrocket with a Robert Tonyan, not just with the comfortability with Luke Getsy, but just, a better player than guys they've had the last couple of years. A true move tight end that I think can, find soft spots in zones, create problems for defenses. And I think they'll try to get a lot more 12 personnel, which I think is interesting. And then also the depth, right? So you have legit 3 running backs, you have 3 receivers with some intriguing, Tyler Smith and Tyler Scott and some interesting guys behind them. I think the Cowboys had is why I said Tyler Smith. And, so it's just cool to see that you have more pieces now. I think, getting good starters is the first part, but then also having quality rotational pieces behind them. And look, I mentioned the defensive line's not great, but you have a lot of inside-outside flexibility guys. You have a lot of versatile talents. If they can figure out a rotation, maybe that's their key to overcoming it is every guy plays 600 snaps, not 850, 900. But yeah, so I'm just excited for how many different players, young players, we're going to see contribute this year.
I think that multiplicity you mentioned, it's such a cool aspect that I feel like I've only started to touch the surface of getting into that. For years now, I've been 11 personnel, 12 personnel. Yeah, I know it. I know football, but I didn't actually watch the film and the impacts of it as much. And as I've started to watch the film more, it's like, man, when you're going to the huddle with 12 personnel, but those guys can both be receivers, or like 21 personnel, but one of those backs can really be a slot receiver. It's like, it can really start to play games with the defense. I think it's something that is really growing in the NFL. Or maybe it's not growing. Maybe it's just my noticing of it that's growing. But like, it seems like stuff that like Atlanta's doing with their roster, they're the ones that really stand out to me of like, man, they can be so multiple in so many ways and hit you in so many ways based on how you're matching their personnel. That's just, it's really cool to see. So I'm glad you mentioned that.
No, for sure. And I think, honestly, the Packers, the years where we thought, oh, they have Devontae Adams and a bunch of dudes, in Green Bay with Getsy, it's like, yeah, but they also had, Tunyon and Lewis and some younger pieces as well. And you had H-backs, you had guys that could line up in the slot like an Aaron Jones. Like, everyone can do a bunch of different things. And I think it just, if you scheme it correctly, it's just hard for a defense to account for all those guys. Even if they're not superstars, it just makes it a lot harder to kind of know where the ball is going on any given play.
Yeah, maxing out your solutions to any problem, I feel like is just it's always a good thing. Did you have something to say on that, Jay?
No, I was just adding in like MVS on that Packers team. One thing I did have a question about, as I'm a big time Justin Fields fan, big time Justin Fields supporter, loved him in the draft. I actually wanted the Cowboys to take him instead of trading back, but it's neither here nor there. But when I look at this, the talent on this roster, with starting out with Mooney, Claypool, Fields, Herbert, Foreman, Kmet, then you were saying they brought in Rob Tunyon and DJ Moore bringing in. Do you think Chase Claypool has a legitimate opportunity to be a legitimate weapon in this offense, or do you think he's going to be either replaced or overlooked after giving up what ended up being a really nice pick that they gave up to go get him, and it just seemed like they never meshed last year?
Really interesting, because he came over from Pittsburgh, and the way Pittsburgh was using him was like behind the line of scrimmage a lot of jet motion, a lot of quick outs, and let him kind of make guys miss in space. And then he comes to Chicago, and I remember like the Jets game in particular, and one other game, and part of it probably was the playbook, but he basically was just like a jump ball guy that just used, just boxed out with his size and didn't really do a whole lot otherwise. So I know he also had the comment that he didn't like lining up in the slot, all these things that you probably don't want to see. I think he absolutely could have a big role here, where like I think he can block if he lines up in the slot. I think he can. He's not going to be Alan Lazar, but like, you can kind of use him in creative ways and do different things than just having him be this contested catch guy. So it's probably up to him more than anybody else, but the talent is there. I think you got to just get comfortable in this offense, build chemistry, learn the playbook, all those things. But yeah, I don't think they've given up on him. I just think, it's going to be tough to pay all three receivers. So, I don't think he's going to get extended before the season or anything like that.
Yeah. And when they made the trade, I mean, you weren't expecting that to be the 32nd pick in the draft either.
Yeah. I like to say I'm over that. What's in the past is in the past.
Right.
So, Brad, we had one more question for you before we jumped into the roster, and that's something you're nervous about with this roster.
I mean, it's going to be, I guess I'll say I'm more nervous about the defensive line than the offensive line. Obviously Darnell Wright's progression is going to be interesting. How does Cody Whitehair shake out at center? But I think the unit's probably good enough, and I like enough pieces there. For me, the defensive line, I mean, last year, you get down in games, which you're going to do, and then teams can just lean on you and just run 6-7 yards a clip down your throat. And it's just kind of hard. I don't care how good the offense might be. It's a pretty hard proposition to sit there for 9-minute drives. A team goes down, scores, and you just can't really overcome that. So, like I said, they did add interesting pieces. I'm probably higher on Rasheem Green than a lot of people. I think he's a fascinating kind of athlete that you can do a lot of different things with. Obviously, DeMarcus Walker was kind of the splash signing for that defense. But I just, the interior, like Andrew Billings, good nose tackle, made good plays last year for the Raiders. But I just still wonder, where are you getting pressure from without blitzing? Because Eberflus doesn't really love to blitz. How are you getting to the quarterback with 4 rushers? I don't really know.
Yeah, I mean, I imagine they're going to have to game a lot of stuff up on that D line. But so Rasheem Green, he's a guy that I actually know very little about. Like, I have some notes on the roster here in front of me, but like, he's a guy who I didn't really have a lot of stuff on. It was really just the PFF stats that I was looking through. And so, what do you see in his game?
So I think he's pretty explosive off the line for his size. Like he's 6'3", probably 260, 270. He's a big dude. And he will kick inside, I think, on pass rush downs, but has good get off. I think his issue has been he was kind of just like a raw athlete. And so it was a lot of like if a guy got hands on him, he couldn't shake him, or he didn't have a counter to his moves. Like he would mix in a move here and there, but there was no secondary option off of that. And so I'm just thinking maybe their thought process was like get him in our building and see if we can keep building onto this, foundation in place. But I mean, yeah, he was productive in Houston at over 30 pressures, maybe didn't convert to sacks, but I think when you throw on the film, you see a guy that has a quick get off. It's just not really converting or not really, getting through the line. But like you said, if they game things up, they stunt a bunch and move him around. I think he's a guy you can kind of spring load if you use him correctly.
That's interesting. That actually, I'm gonna have to go watch some of his tape now because I'm interested now because, I mean, I'll be honest, in the free agency cycle, I was just kind of like, man, they're not doing anything. Like it's like just poke him with a stick, like do something more. Which, granted, someone said to me just recently, like GMs are never praised for the moves they don't make. And it's like, yeah, I can see the value in that some, but like I just wanted something a bit more exciting all off season after the DJ Moore trade, which was so exciting. And it's just like it's almost like it happening that early, like created a letdown in my brain of like I was thinking
just
that
expecting
it's gonna keep getting
it to be the
better and
domino.
better and better. Yeah, exactly. The domino. That's a great way to put it. But so I was gonna say the O-line. Like I am cautiously optimistic with this group. Like I keep having to tell myself, like I look at it, I'm like, it could work. Yeah, that could work. And I'm like, wait, I need to temper myself. Like it's a fifth round second year player. It's a first round rookie, like still a rookie, right? First round, great. You love it. Top 10, but it's still a rookie. And then just some health questions on the inside. What do you make of what they've got there on the O-line? I'm curious to hear your opinion on it.
Yeah, so with Braxton Jones, I do think he still lose to power last year, and it was evident that he, coming from Southern Utah, 5th-round pick, a guy that could bull rush or could simply just convert speed to power was probably going to push through him. But I think he's a very good athlete for his size, has great footwork, and I think you saw him get better and better as the season went on. I think he's great out in the run game, but look, he was a top 20 graded tackle for us last year, and I will tout, our trench grades I think are usually very, very solid. Maybe compared to other position groups. But it's like I think it was really just him adjusting to NFL speed after barely even playing at college speed at Southern Utah, with all due respect. So I'm high on him. I think he's going to be a good football player. Sounds like he's an extremely hard worker. Every press conference, he's a likable guy as well. So I'm cool with him. With Darnell Wright, though, I think there is going to be the classic like over expectation. And even look at just last year. I mean, Evan Neal was a significantly more touted prospect than Darnell Wright was, and was not good for the Giants at right tackle. And yeah, it was a position switch for him. I guess Wright is kind of a natural right tackle, and I think his trajectory is sharply upward. His grades and stuff 2 years ago are not particularly good, but you watch the film against Will Anderson, everyone talked about, but Derek Hall and a couple other games I watched, and he just, unlike Braxton Jones, he does not lose the power. Like the guy is a tree trunk, and just like you can't push him over. So I'm cautiously optimistic on the tackles. I think we'll see how it goes. I think they will use Fields' athleticism to kind of mitigate if those guys are on islands, how badly it goes. The interior, I think, is going to be good. If Tevin Jenkins stays healthy, I think this guard duo could quietly be one of the better guard duos in the NFL. Nate Davis in particular, top 10 grade for us on zone runs the last 3 seasons. Obviously, you come in, Chicago was like second in inside zone and probably top 10 in outside zone runs. So that's going to be your bread and butter. And coming from Tennessee, it's a perfect match. And then Cody Whitehair, I thought he always put his best football at center outside of snapping, which obviously is a big caveat, but I thought he blocked the best at center. So long answer short, like there's a disaster scenario, there's a high upside scenario. I think realistically they're an average offensive line, and I'll take an average offensive line any day of the week.
Hey, average offensive line with elite skill set talent can get it done every day of the week. I did have one question. I don't follow the Bears too terribly close. I mean, I get a lot of it from Quentin and everything, but followed big fan of college football. Follow the Big 12 more heavily than anything. Being a Texas Tech guy, But Tevin Jenkins at left guard there, is there still the hope that he can be a bookend tackle, or is he more or less permanently a guard at this point?
He's permanently entrenched now. In this regime, I think pretty much right away thought he would be better on the inside, which I almost think I agree with. Honestly, he was always a road grader in college. Like he was fine at right tackle his last college season. I know he played both, but like I just think that his grit, his nastiness, I think he stacks up well against the bigger interior defensive linemen, and can actually get a push forward, not just kind of like I think he wants to play forward, and that is why in part I think it makes more sense to have him on the interior. Like he doesn't want to drop and be passive. I think he wants to be active. So I don't know. Maybe who knows with him? He changes position every week. But
I was just curious if this was that he's still young and just kind of trying to break him in, get his feet wet, but the ultimate goal was still to be one of those bookends for you. But I mean, he's a hell of a player. I mean, at that guard spot, I thought he played great from what I saw last year. So I just didn't know if I was missing something or if there was still the hope that he's your future at left tackle or possibly right tackle or something.
Correct me if I'm wrong, Quentin, but I don't think so.
No, I mean, Braxton Jones showed a lot to like last year at left tackle. Okay. And I mean, if he fell down, like if he really struggled this year, I think it would, maybe I'm doomsday in this, but I think it would hurt the Bears a lot. And they'd probably have a high draft pick, and you might be looking at a guy like Fashan, who out of Penn State playing left tackle going forward. But I really like the way he put that about Jenkins, that you think he likes to play forward, because as Jay was asking that question, I was thinking and as you were responding to it, Brad, I was like, he does, he's a guy who it feels like kind of needs to get that momentum in his
bully
play
ball,
and he'll start stacking plays. But if he's having to play backwards, it's hard to make that momentum happen, right? So like that fit at guard does make a lot more sense, I think.
Yeah, no doubt.
And I can't help but wonder if his back issues did limit some mobility there, which kind of might have forced him inside a little. But I'm not a doctor. That's not my place to say. Let's take a look at the defense over here. And it was rough. It was a rough year last year, man. I got these numbers in front of me: 32nd in points allowed, 32nd in EPA per play, 32nd in success rate, 32nd in PFF grade. I mean, it was rough. And they went out, they got two shiny new linebackers right there in the middle. And as a salary cap guru, how does that make you feel, Brad?
It was interesting, right? So you talk about the splashes you were looking for in free agency, and I think the timing was just not great, where they obviously need interior defensive line. Well, first they need edge, and there were basically no good edges in free agency. But then you go to interior defensive line, and the market happens to be exploding this offseason. I mean, on par with wide receiver last year, where I like Draymond Jones. Am I mad the Bears didn't give Draymond Jones $17 million a year? Not really. Like Zach Allen getting almost 16, I think it was 15.75. Like, good player, good football player. I'm not paying him that either. So I think he just didn't really line up particularly well. And so, there's certainly cause for concern. But with the linebackers, I do buy into the narrative on Edmonds. First, just being a better fit, has the size, probably 5 inches taller than Roquan Smith. I think does play backwards well. Was phenomenal in coverage last year. And the last piece for me, and I know this is like, I always try to not fall into these narratives, and now I'm kind of in this space. But you talk to Bills people. I met a bunch of them at the Combine and was talking about Tremaine Edmonds. This is funny because I didn't know he was going to be a Bear. I was just working on free agency stuff and trying to project his deal, all these things. And they said there are some people that asked us, like, why was he so good in his contract year after not being great? Is that a red flag? Is there a reason for that? And they were like, the dude is 25 years old. He was just figuring out how to play football for the first couple of years he was here. They're all sad to see him go. And they were just like, yeah, it's just like, once the game slowed down for him and he knew what he was trying to accomplish on a given snap, then he became the guy we drafted, in the first round. So I think the sky's the limit for him. I think he's going to be a phenomenal football player in Chicago for a long time. But it was interesting that is your big splash spend is that off-ball linebacker.
I will say, as an unbiased fan of the NFC North, having Matt Eberflus go out and spend money on linebackers as a Bears fan wouldn't bother me one bit at all with his track record.
Yeah,
I know,
Cowboys linebacker coach for a while, right?
yeah, and I know whenever you look at it, you're like, oh, I don't want to spend the money on the off-ball linebackers, but when you look at some of the dominant Cowboys defenses like 16, 17, 18 like that, like what he did with Jalen Smith his rookie year, what he did with Leighton Vander Esch, what he did with Sean Lee, some of the guys that came through, then some of the journeymen that were also in there at the same time. I mean, the impact they were able to make at that linebacker position, you just don't see in today's current NFL. So going to get two studs like that, I mean, in my opinion, yeah, as a capologist, maybe you don't like it, but I mean, given the track record and the talent and ability of these guys that they brought in, I mean, I think as Bears fans, you're immediately going to fall in love with this linebacker core and be like, oh my god, like people, you could still play off the ball linebacker at a high level and make a positive impact on the game every single week. So
We saw Jack Sanborn do it last year.
I'm excited. I'm excited to see what he does with these guys.
No, for sure.
So on the D line, one question I actually had this question in my notes specifically. Like, do you think we see them go after a guy like a Matt Ioannidis or like a Shelby Harris or something like that on the interior just to try to beef this up a little more?
I would love to see either of those guys sign in Chicago. Harris, a bit older, but was still a really good player last year. I don't really understand why Seattle kind of shook up their entire interior this offseason. But yeah, I think they're going to add a defensive lineman. I don't know if it's going to be a free agent. I don't know if it's going to be a trade. I don't know if it's going to be an edge or an interior guy, but I don't think we know the starting defensive line as of today. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'm delusional. But I'll ride that line until September 10th or whatever it is.
Well, I'm hoping with you there because I mean I might be one of the only people to say this, but I mean I was big on Javon Dexter coming into this draft, and I love him, but I don't think that he's a guy who's ready to start day one. And outside of that, you're looking at Justin Jones and Andrew Billings, who are fine NFL players, but like you'd like a little more there, you know. And then looking at the secondary. So big year for Jalen Johnson here, right? I mean, he is a free agent after this year. He's put together some nice tape. He's put together some stuff that really it's just injuries, I feel like, that are really bogging him down more than anything. When after he's gotten hurt, some of his stats haven't been quite as good, but his stats before he gets hurt tend to be like really, really good. He's such a scheme versatile player. What do you usually see with cornerbacks like this, as if you even know of like that are going into contract years and kind of are in a put up or shut up year to try to really get that bag? How do you usually see them perform?
Yeah, so I agree with you. First point, like outside of injuries, I think he's been a good Chicago Bear pretty much since day one. I think it always is meaningful when you have guys like Cooper Kupp shouting you out and saying you're a good player. I think that goes a long way. He doesn't say that randomly. Yeah, it's interesting. It's been a struggle for early extensions for a lot of these guys, and so they have oftentimes entered these contract years and played through them. And then you look at two guys in Tampa, and Carlton Davis and Jamel Dean. There's been a bunch of, and then you got like guys like Darius Williams and various players, Shaq Griffin, that change teams. That they're all kind of in this mid range where it's if you're not like one of the clear elite 20 million plus guys, you kind of quickly drop into like the 12, 13 range. I think how he plays this year could dictate a ton, right? He could get poached by someone, or the Bears keep him around, tag him, whatever, for a lot of money, or he gets hurt again, and it's a struggle. You kind of see him fall into that Rock Ya-Sin and those type of guys where you're signing 1-year flyers and trying to get back to the market. So I think his range of outcomes is massive. I hope it's on the positive end. I think he has all the talent in the world to do that. I agree with you. I think, I don't think the scheme change, in particular bothered him. I kind of like him in a cover two, heavy system. I think you're getting him more opportunities to play press up at the line and do things that I think his skill set is better with, perhaps, than like a Fangio type defense. But yeah, he just got to stay healthy, stay on the field, and it all trickles down from there.
All right. So we got a little bit of time left, and before we get into record talk and everything, I got to ask a Justin Fields question here, and I'm going to kind of go a roundabout way of asking this. So you have Carolina's pick. Carolina might be good. We talked about them last week. Solid start there. You also have your own pick. What is a successful season for Justin Fields here with multiple highly touted quarterbacks coming out of next year's draft, having potentially 2 higher picks? What does Justin Fields need to do to prove that he is the dude going forward? Or what has to happen for the scenario that you're talking about going to get Caleb Williams next year?
Yeah, I think the biggest one for me is just limiting the sacks, right? And pressures are going to come because his offensive line, again, is not great. But his pressure to sack rate was the highest in the NFL last year. His average time to throw was the highest in the NFL last year. Like, things that he can control. And again, if receivers aren't creating separation, he's not going to be able to get the ball out quickly. But
I like Justin Fields. It was just a question.
Yeah, no, exactly. So, I think you could argue kind of the excuses are gone. I think the excuses were fair last year, but now it's like, all right, the unit around you is good enough. I think you combine passing and rushing, let's say like 4,500 total yards.
I think that's a good number.
Yeah, like, throw for 3,500, run for 1,000 again, or maybe, throw for 38, run for 700, whatever. I think that in that wheelhouse, but for me, it's honestly just like, be consistent, be on schedule, will play within the offense, trust your eyes, maybe some more anticipatory throws. I do think he still kind of needs to see a guy come open to get rid of the football, which is understandable. He played Ohio State in the spread offense with 3 first-round pick wide receivers. I get it.
Guys get open pretty easy.
Yeah, exactly. So, but yeah, just like, and I think he's capable of all these things. Like, his press conferences, he explains exactly what went wrong or what went right. Like, I don't think it's a lack of understanding. I think it's really just trust, and I get why he doesn't have confidence or trust in his pass catchers or his line last year. So, yeah, it's stats is part of it, of course, but honestly, it's like, for me, I just want to see the game speed up a little bit and just limit some of the downside. We already know he's a rare athlete, so just add some of the simple stuff, really.
All right, so one more question, then I'll let you and Q finish it out, being the diehard Bears guys here. But let's say he shows enough at the end of this season to where you're not interested in getting a Drake May or a Caleb Williams or anything next year. Finishing year 3, and say he's shown enough to where you think he's the guy, but there's still a little bit there to be desired. As a cap guy, do you go ahead and sign him at what people may consider a discount for a franchise quarterback, or do you wait till year 4? Because in my mind, if you think you have a guy and you can save a couple million a year, sign him a year early, sign him after year 3, lock up that long-term deal, like make it a 3-4 year extension, whatever it is. But would you have that thought? Or if it was, let's see what we have one more year, but we're not going to go get a Caleb Williams or a Drake May and just kind of sit and wait for one more year and see what happens? Because, I mean, that contract's coming quick now that you're really getting the first true year in year 3, in my opinion.
Yeah, no, I'm with you. I think it would take a lot. Like, he'd have to be very, very good, where then you say, all right, let's just get a deal done. Like you said, another market's going to grow, so just sign him before Trevor Lawrence, sign him as soon as possible for, $56 million, whatever it's going to be at that point.
It's going to be expensive no matter what.
For sure. But for me, it's like, if there's still any doubt, you just pick up the 5th-year option and you roll into the 4th season. You think you buy yourself some time.
But don't go after the quarterback?
Yeah. Just go into the 4th year, and you have the 5th-year option at your disposal. Just say, hey, look, we're still, like you said, we're not drafting anyone. We're still betting on you. We just want to see a little bit more out of you before we get there. And the counter to, like, you're smart. You're right. You want to get out ahead of it, sign a guy as early as possible. I do think a quarterback, like, I'll pay an extra $2 million a year if I'm infinitely more confident kind of in my eval, as opposed to maybe jumping the gun and pulling a Daniel Jones or whatever. So, yeah, I play it patient, even though I totally, I get the question, obviously, as a cap guy.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, I'll let y'all guys finish it out. Y'all are the Bears fans, so we'll get a little bit more of your time. So I'll let y'all finish it out from here.
Yeah, that's the nightmare scenario there is what the Carson Wentz, the Jared Goff contract that you're just like avoiding like wildfire. I'll throw out one Justin Fields stat just because I've got it in front of me and he came up that from weeks 4 through 15, Fields ranked 7th in the NFL in EPA per play, 10th in success rate, 9th in CPOE, 12th in PFF grade. That's not PFF passing grade. That's overall grade. So that included running. And then 7th in deep passing grade from PFF. So there was a lot to like. It was really 5 games, weeks 1 through 3, when there were still a lot of scheme questions clearly going on and a lot of no trust really in anyone around him. And I mean, like, so I think one or two of those interceptions were probably the worst of his career from like a watching film and trying to reason it out standpoint. But then something clicked in week 4 and it all started to go uphill. And then week 16 against the Bills he actually graded really well that game, but the stats were awful. The grade was great. And it was like, there were something like 4 or 5 drops from the receivers. There were a bunch of injuries that came in that game. And I think it was just a really tough personnel thing. And then in week 17, I swear he was concussed. I do not think he was right in that game. Yeah. But Brad, we know you got to get going here in a minute. So real quick here, we got some basic bets lined up here. What do you like if you have to pick something? And you're more than welcome to say, I wouldn't bet it myself, but if I have to pick something, this is what I'm picking. What do you like on the Bears odds?
Yeah, so I do think like the bet is probably gone now. Like division winner or stuff like that, I think was bet down like crazy, and the value's probably gone. If I wanted to bet the Bears now, either you do an alternate over. So I know it's not on the screen, I'm cheating, but look, instead of betting the flat -110 on each side, 7.5, if you think they're going to take off, go bet over 9.5. I don't know what the price is. I think it's like plus 220 or something like that. Or my kind of sneaky favorite way to bet this, if you wanted to, Matt Eberflus Coach of the Year, his odds are way down the list. Like if you think they're going to go 10-7, sneak in the playoffs, whatever, try to get a little bit cheeky with it. But
Justin Fields
the schedule is pretty easy. So they really do have a path to, I mean, you get the NFC South, and then you get the Cardinals, the Buccaneers, you get Denver, Washington, Raiders. Like there's some bad football teams on their schedule. So I say bet a tail outcome where they really, they explode.
You got to play the best team in the NFC twice, though. That sucks.
Who would that be? Detroit?
I think so, but
interesting.
So up until this year, the last 2 years, we've been a Detroit Lions podcast with our motto being "Do not sleep on the Lions," because they were just money against the spread, over and over and over. But we're changing that this year, so we think the book's out on them, and it won't work anymore.
Probably not. They'll win more games in reality, but they'll probably cover fewer spreads.
We're like the guys that started listening to Blink 182 like 3 years before they blew up, and then all of a sudden Blink 182 was the biggest band in the world, and we're like, oh, we don't like them anymore.
Right. They're too mainstream.
But Brad, one more time, tell the people where they can find you, and we'll let you get out of here.
Yeah, of course. Thank you guys so much for having me. You can follow me on Twitter at PFF_Brad, putting out content on PFF.com, every week, and overthecap.com for any contract, salary cap, anything like that you can find over there.
Awesome. Thanks so much again for joining, man. We really appreciate it, and you have a good night. And I'm always rooting for the Bears, man. So I hope y'all have a good season.
We need all the help we can get. Appreciate you guys. Have a good night.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Right. Thanks, Brad.
All right. Well, that was the man himself, the legend. But we kind of get through all the talk about the roster and everything. Do you have anything you wanted to add now that he's gone, or? No, it's your baby.
Yeah, let me see. So one thing that I want to dive in a little more on some of the things I said. Just we were kind of plowing through on some of it, but
went by fast.
So on that, the 5 weeks I was talking about where Justin Fields' stats are like unforgivably bad, and then the weeks 4 through 15 where it was like this guy might be really freaking good. Yeah. So in the bad stretch, he ranked 23rd in deep passing by PFF grade, in the good stretch 7th. Like there are multiple major jumps like that are like pretty impressive. as far as saying like, okay, there might have been more at play here because he gave us enough glimpses that you can start to feel really good about some of them. Now, that's not to say I'm fully on the train of like he's made it, he's there. He's not. He still needs to get better as a passer, like Brad mentioned, with the anticipation, with the seeing it before he throws it. That is a bit of an issue, and it's almost like there are times on tape where you're like, you see that he sees it, and you see that he's like, I know I should pull this trigger, but there's a 60-40 chance that guy catches the ball. If I run, there's a 90% chance I get a first down.
Yeah.
Like you can see it going through his brain of just like, this isn't the better option.
Yeah. So I'll ask you basically what I asked him. Like, what do you need to see out of Justin Fields this year? Assuming if he's not great, you're going to have probably a top 15 pick on your own with this roster. Assuming Cardinal or Panthers are league average or a little bit less, 2 picks in the top 12, and Justin Fields maybe progresses a little bit. He shows a little bit more as a passer, but now you have weapons. Now you have the Darnell Mooney's. Now you have Cole Kmet coming into year 2, year 3. With the Chase Claypools, and you went and got DJ Moore. You got help in the backfield. But let's say he doesn't really make the jump, but he's still pretty good. Like at what point?
I mean,
what do you do in that situation? Because it's like you have some of the most premier talent we've seen, and 2 of the best quarterbacks that we've seen come out in a while with Drake May and Caleb Williams. I'm sure somebody else will rise up as well. And then after that, I mean, you're looking at Quinn Ewers the next year, and then a year after that, Arch Manning. But I wouldn't put either one of those guys on the level of Caleb Williams and probably even Drake May at this point. So it's like, I know it's always next year has the best quarterback. Like, we'll figure it out next year. But having the draft capital and everything going into next year's draft, like, what do we need to see from Justin Fields right here to be confident moving forward?
So, I mean, I'm a little more tempered on this than Brad. If we're going pure stats, I'm 4,000 yards passing plus rushing, 35 touchdowns passing plus rushing. So
to be confident moving forward
last year. Yeah, to feel really good about it, but like, because that's 10 more touchdowns than last year, and it's like 800 more yards.
Yeah.
But I mean, ultimately, it's going to come down more to the tape than anything as a thrower. And if I'm being completely honest, even if the tape isn't there as a thrower, I might still just go in on it because
if he's still running the ball as good as he can.
Yeah.
Assuming...
I mean, so I pulled up this stat the other day. I wrote an article about it. Every quarterback to ever achieve over 600 rushing yards in a single season: Russell Wilson, Donovan McNabb, Steve McNair, Cam Newton, Randall Cunningham, Michael Vick, Dante Culpepper, Josh Allen, Lamar Jackson, Colin Kaepernick, Kyler Murray, and then you get to the uglier part: Daniel Jones, Bobby Douglas, RG3. Jalen Hurts doesn't belong in this part. He just ended up down there. And then Tim Tebow.
RG3 was also RG3 was an incredible passer until everything just went to shit too. So
yeah, you have 6 Super Bowl appearances in there out of 16 quarterbacks. Not all of them were the best throwers, but you know what? You can build a team that's going to get there around it.
Yeah.
Like, it is shown. I mean, Russell Wilson got there twice. McNabb got there once. He went to Lord knows how many NFC championships. McNair got there once, came up a yard short of winning. Russ is the only guy to win it in this group, which is a bit concerning. But, like, the amount of guys who got there, you have 3 MVPs. You have, what? Let's see.
But
7 different quarterbacks who made an all-pro team.
A lot of those guys you just mentioned would be far and away the best Bears quarterback of all time if they played in Chicago.
Exactly. That's what I'm saying. I don't think you ditch it just because the guy's not an immaculate passer. I don't know if I'm signing him to an extension early by any means. if he doesn't, show it as a passer.
See, my
But I'm
opinion
letting
on
it
it would
play
be,
out because of what his rushing ability has shown.
my
so far.
opinion would be is that you didn't really get to take full advantage of the rookie contract. So you might as well just get it done and start building for the future if you're not going after a quarterback right now. Otherwise, you're going to be stuck on a fourth year going into a fifth year option, and then you're stuck in the Washington purgatory of like the Kirk Cousins like saga, or like the Dallas Cowboys scenario where it's like if they would have just signed Dak and got it over with, like they would have probably been able to keep Amari Cooper in the long run. They would have been able to do a lot more, but instead they drugged their feet and then they had to franchise Dak, or like the Washington football team with
For everyone that goes bad, it goes like bad that way. There's one that goes.
But
bad
if
the
you
other
sign him
way,
to an extension, like so let's say you're going into year 4, you sign a 3-year extension, you get his money right there. I mean, you're probably, the way they structure contracts in the NFL, you probably still get an out after year 2, year 3, and have the flexibility moving forward. So it's like, you, in my opinion, you may as well just get it done, make him happy, get talent in there, and then move forward rather than being potentially held hostage a year later. But that,
yeah, I mean, I can go back and forth on it, but at the end of the day, I'm going to be more cautious with it if I'm not sold. Like I'm just going to. It just makes more sense to me to keep the flexibility of being less committed than it does of putting myself in a corner and having. I don't have Howie Roseman at GM.
yeah.
To get out of Carson.
Well,
Wentz,
you could just
and he's still paying for it
technically, but you would never see it. You could always just go the Patrick Mahomes route and just, instead of signing him to $500 million contract, you sign him. Let's say, hey, Justin Fields, we like you. You run the ball well. You can get us tutties on the field. Like, we'll give you 10 years, $290 million fully guaranteed. Then you're on the hook for $29 million for the next 10 years. But that's pretty cheap.
Yeah, it is. But yeah, I think that touched on really what I wanted to talk about with the Bears. This defense is going to be, I don't know. I just don't know with this D line what it's going to end up being. The back seven, I feel really good about actually, but if they add a vet like a Matt Ioannidis or Shelby Harris, I think this D line starts to look better. So it starts to look like passable.
Yeah. Isn't
but right now you have 4. Yeah, he is. But honestly, I'm more worried about the interior than the edge.
The edge, okay.
I mean, and the edge needs help too. Don't get me wrong; they both need a lot of.
Do the Bears still have quite a bit of money?
Yeah, they still have a ton of money.
So they'll get something done. What it might mean, it might not be the guys you mentioned, but like I'm sure they'll get some guys in there.
They'll get someone. It's just a matter.
I mean, the free agent pool is
Ryan Poles has drawn a very clear line in the sand that he will not spend more than he thinks he should.
Except at linebacker.
I don't expect that to change. I mean, the linebacker deals are pretty conservative, to be honest.
Yeah.
Like Tremaine Edmonds' deal is a 2-year deal.
Yeah.
A 2-year deal that is a 4-year deal if he's good.
I'm excited for those linebackers.
I mean, they're very.
You look at I mentioned earlier, but you look at Eberflus's track record with off the ball linebackers, and they make a huge difference. And having 2 of them, I'm excited for those 2 guys. But we're almost at 45 minutes on the Bears right now, so let's jump into the schedule.
Okay. Yeah,
we'll do the same for the Cowboys next week. I ain't trying to push it along or nothing, but all right. So looking at the schedule, we're strength schedule 27th in the league, and starting out, just immediately looking at it, first glance, I like late buys. That might be a little bit too late for my liking, but with an easier schedule,
it's a young team.
Yeah, with a young team like that and an easier schedule, it's not too bad. So we'll break it down here. We got Green Bay week 1 at home. I love this game for the Bears. And then you go to Tampa Bay, to Kansas City, Then you got Denver coming into Chicago. Then going to Washington. So this first 5-game stretch, like I can easily see a 3-2 start is definitely not out of the question, and I think we could possibly even be talking about a 4-1 start here. I think Green Bay is the toss up in this. I absolutely think you can beat Tampa Bay. Obviously, I'm gonna say we're gonna lose. You're gonna lose to Kansas City, but any given Sunday, brother. And then I think you're a better team than Denver and Washington. So I think Tampa Bay, Denver, and Washington, I think are all winnable games. Not saying you'll win all of them, but you kind of expect to win. I think you have the advantage in a lot of those situations. I think with Green Bay being the toss up and Kansas City being a loss. What do you think about that first 5 games?
Man, the Bears are the most difficult team to project this year. Honestly, like I have two wins, a loss, and 2 toss-ups in the first 5.
Yeah.
I got them being Green Bay, got them being Tampa, got them losing to Kansas City, and a toss-up against Denver and Washington.
Okay.
Just because it's in Washington on Thursday night, short rest, you're the away team, and their biggest strength is one of your biggest weaknesses, and their D-line versus our O-line.
Whenever I look at matchups, this could be just me being a casual fan. I don't know. But I just look at quarterback versus quarterback, and I'm like, who has the better quarterback in the game? And as long as they're not severely overmatched everywhere else on the field, I'll take the better quarterback. And I think they have the better quarterback in Tampa Bay, Denver, and Washington. I think Green Bay is a toss-up because it's Green Bay. It's a division game. But I think they have the better quarterback in that game as well. And I don't think they're overmatched too severely everywhere else, except maybe in the Washington game in the trenches. But I just don't know how Washington's going to get anything going offensively to where I think Justin Fields can make enough plays to swing that in their favor.
Yeah, I mean,
and one good thing,
I'm leaning more.
One good thing about a short week with a mobile quarterback is that if shit hits the fan, he can improvise.
Yeah,
and Washington.
I'm leaning more towards the win against Washington, but at the end of the day, road team on Thursday night, it's just hard to say it's a win.
No, absolutely, I understand
for most teams, but Denver is actually. I think Denver is. If this game was in Denver, this would be a straight loss. Like that team has a lot more talent than they're getting credit for.
No, I think they're a sleeping giant for sure, but I think I could see them starting the season 2-0. Kansas City being either a wake-up call to where you get your doors blown off and you're like, okay, we got to do better, and then you show up re-energized, or you keep it close and you're like, we just played with the best in the league. We just went toe-to-toe with Patrick Mahomes. We can do this with anybody.
Yeah.
So I don't see a scenario coming out of that Kansas City game to where they come out flat against Denver. Like,
yeah, that's a good point.
So it's either you're gonna be 2-0 and you're gonna get humbled and refocused, or you're gonna be 2-0 and go toe-to-toe with the best in the league and be like, okay, we belong here. Like, let's go. Let's do this thing.
Yeah, I can see that.
If they beat Kansas City, I could definitely straight up see them losing to Denver. Like, all day. All day. But then you just switch the Denver-Kansas City scenario, and I think you still end up at 3-2, 4-1 in that first 5.
Yeah, first 5, I've got 3-2.
All right, moving on. Minnesota, Las Vegas, Los Angeles, New Orleans. I see this a little bit tougher. Minnesota, I think, is the second best team in this division. And then you have the Raiders, which I don't expect to be very good. I'll give them the Raiders win. But then after back-to-back home games, you go on the road to LA, all the way across the country. Then you have to fly back across the country and go south to New Orleans, who's going to be very well coached. Whether or not they're a good team, they're well coached and they're going to be hard nosed, tough. I see best case scenario here. You go 2-2. I think this might be a 1-3 stretch for them though after that first 5 games.
Yeah, I think they handle Minnesota at home. And I think they beat the Raiders, but
Yeah, they'll get a little
next
mini
two I've
bye
got
there
is-
against Minnesota. So
Yeah. And then I've got the loss against the Chargers, and I've got a toss-up against New Orleans. I think that could go either way.
I'll give them 2-2 for this.
But most likely, I'm leaning towards the loss against.
I'll give them 2-2 there. So I'll put them at what is that? I'll go 5-4 at this point in the season.
Yeah, I've gotten 5.5 and 3.5 because I have 3 toss-ups instead. I don't have an even number there.
Yeah.
Yet.
So then we have Carolina, Detroit. Then you go to Minnesota, and then Detroit again. This might be a 1-4 stretch for them. I mean, you got Detroit off the bye at home, but at this point in the season, I think you might be dead even. So 13 games in, 6-7, 7-6. I think this is what this team's looking like after the Detroit game going down the stretch, which isn't a bad spot to be. I mean, you're in playoff contention, you're in the hunt, like ready to go. But
beat Carolina. I think they're going to beat Detroit on that mini bye
at Detroit.
But yeah, and then lose to mini. I think that mini bye is going to be.
Then you get Detroit again after the bye. Think you beat Detroit twice?
Yep.
You think you beat Detroit twice?
I do. This isn't in the moment. I've said this on a podcast already this year. I think they beat Detroit twice.
Oh, I'm excited for that 4-week stretch in the podcast calendar. But then last 4 games of the season, we go to Cleveland, we go to Arizona, we go to Atlanta, we go to Green Bay. I think these are 4 winnable games, and I think this is, if they're 6-7, 7-6, I think this is where they can finish 11-7 or no, not 11-7, 10-7 or 11-6.
I've got lose Cleveland, Arizona. If Kyler's back, that's a toss-up. But if he's not, that's a win. Actually, I'm just going to throw that in toss-up because Kyler should be back.
I think they get to double-digit wins. I think 7.5 is way too low for this team.
I think they're going to lose to Atlanta. Atlanta's strengths and their weaknesses. Like, Atlanta is strong in the trenches. They're strong in the trenches, and the Bears are weak in the trenches, and I think you win and lose in the trenches. So
but they're not good.
That is that's a very valid argument, but
if they were good, why aren't they good?
I mean, they won 7 games last year.
All right, we'll fly through the rest. Yeah, exactly. We'll fly.
And then Green Bay, I've got as a toss-up as well, so that puts me at what? I think
I
I've
got
got
10.5.
9 wins.
You got them at 9. I got it at 10.5. So we're both taking the over. I'm not taking them to win the division. I think they're at plus 400. I don't think that's enough juice for, in my opinion, the third best team to take. So if I'm taking anything, NFC Championship at plus 2,200, I think is looking pretty good. I think when you have a quarterback like Justin Fields, plus 2,200 to win the NFC, and you have the potential to win double-digit games, 100 to win 2,200 is a pretty solid bet. So that might be my favorite bet out of these listed.
You got a lot more faith in this D line than I do.
It's not about the D line. It's about when you get to the playoffs, who gets it done. And I mean, we've seen people carry other people before. Injuries happen other places on the field. If I'm sitting here looking at this team, and I think they're the third best team in the division, and I think they can still win double-digit games, then why in the hell would I not take them at plus 2,200 to win the NFC Championship when I'm not going to take them to win the division at plus 400? So, I mean, just based on odds,
if I'm being honest, I think the best bets here are just playoffs at plus 175. It's not a lot of juice, but like I think that is the best value you're getting because
it might be
with 7 teams, and I think they're an 8 to 9 win team. They're going to be right there for the 7th seed.
I think Justin Fields is just that good to where get in the dance, and then it's a 1-game season from there on out. And I think Justin Fields is special enough to where at plus 2,200, I'll lay it.
I might be protecting myself a little by not agreeing with you, but
all right. So we're an hour in, so we'll try to speed through the rest of this division. Green Bay Packers suck. We can move on.
We gotta touch on them a little bit at least.
If you're a Packers fan, sorry, you can stick around for a little bit. I have some good things to say. I love your young wide receivers on this offense. I love Christian Watson. I love Romeo Doubs. I think Jordan Love can do some big things in this offense. I think Aaron Jones is still one of the best running backs in the league. AJ Dillon, Quadzilla, Thighzilla, what do they call him? Quadzilla? Absolute Quadzilla, beast. And you might have the best defensive line in the division. So you got a lot of good things going for you here. You did lose your Hall of Fame quarterback, but it never stopped you before.
Yeah. I'm just going to power through some of these thoughts on offense. So Jordan Love, we can clown all we want. We have no idea what they have in him.
He looked good
I don't even know if they know what they.
He looked good in the garbage time that he played, but I mean, at the end of the day, that's what it was.
The guy's taken 137 snaps in his NFL career, or something like that. It's not more than 200. Like it's just impossible to really say until he plays a good amount of snaps and D coordinators start adjusting to him. You know, that's gonna make a big difference. We'll see what he can do. This offense probably fits his skill set pretty well. There's a reason Matt LaFleur liked him. So we'll see. I'm not at all sold on him, but I've been wrong plenty in my life. So at running back, Aaron Jones is one of the most versatile backs in the league. He can do just about anything out there. He's turning 29 this year. He's still putting up really good efficiency numbers and making tacklers miss at a high rate. Until that stuff starts to decline, I'm not worried about him declining. But he did have some fumbling issues last year, I believe. Yeah, or maybe it was in the past. I forget. My notes just say his fumbling issues could become a bigger deal. I don't remember what I meant by that.
Aaron Jones is my number one fantasy running back last year going into the draft, and it didn't quite pan out that way, but he was still pretty efficient. AJ Dillon seemingly for the past 2 years feels like it's like any day now he's going to take that job. And Aaron Jones just keeps doing his thing.
I mean, honestly, AJ Dillon wasn't very good last year.
A lot of people, a lot of quote unquote experts had, fantasy wise at least, had AJ Dillon as the running back to have in that offense. And I guess they weren't right, and I wasn't right either. So I can't really shit on him, but
I mean, he was just much less explosive than he had been in the previous years. In 2021, he'd break a tackle and then he'd bust off a lot more yards. Last year, he didn't. He was slowed down. I don't know. Maybe it was more asked to play the more bruiser role. I'm not sure. I loved him coming out of college, so like I have a hard time saying that he's not good. But like his efficiency metrics are really rough last year.
I think
at wide.
I was gonna say I think the biggest story in all of this is when you look at the acquisitions and the people who left. I mean, you lost Aaron Rodgers, Alan Lazard, Randall Cobb, Rob Tonyan, Adrian Amos. You lost your kicker, Mason Crossbar. And then you didn't add a whole lot on top of that. So that tells me that this front office is saying to Jordan Love, you're either going to do it or you're not. But we're not bought in. Is kind of what the
way this roster is constructed. The way this roster is constructed to me reads like you got to show it now, kid, or we're tanking. Like that. That's my read on.
And
it. Like this,
they have the assets to have a mid-season fire sale, acquire a bunch of future picks and talent, and reload for the future. I actually love how they transitioned from Aaron Rodgers to Jordan Love here. Because I do think they have the talent on the team for a young quarterback to walk in and prove it. It's not like the Justin Fields situation in the past couple of years. I mean, there's proven commodities everywhere on the field. Decent running game, decent offensive line, good defensive line. You're never really going to be in a hole, and some pretty good receivers as well. On top of all that,
so the receiver room, I'm actually more skeptical on. I think
I
there's a
love
lot of
Christian
risk in this
Watson.
room. Hey, I like Christian Watson a lot. I don't know if he's ever going to be a dominant wide receiver one, though. Like, I think he is an outstanding deep threat. I think he is a hell of a wide receiver to have on your team, but I don't think he's your go-to number one receiver either, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Like, he's not going up. You're not throwing jump balls out to him. You're not asking him to win possession receptions on big downs. He is the explosive threat who is constantly putting the defense in danger.
I think Romeo Doubs got to step up big time here, but
well, he better, because if he doesn't, this receiver room gets really ugly, really, really fast. And that's not. I don't think this team's going to need to pass a lot as we move on to the O-line here in a minute. But like this receiver room, one of my notes here is they are 1 or 2 injuries away from turning into an XFL caliber wide receiver room.
Yeah.
And that's a rough thought. And Jaden Reed, I love Jaden Reed. I just hate relying on a rookie who's not like a top 10 pick, top 15 pick.
Yeah, and
to come
wide
in
receivers
and be one of your top receivers.
Wide receivers is, if you're not generational, it's probably one of the hardest positions to just walk into the NFL and be great immediately. I mean, you see 3rd, 4th, 5th round guys every year do it, but at the same time, there's 55 receivers drafted every year. Like, and
yeah,
you can't look at like the 3 or 4 guys that like, oh look, well a 5th round receiver went out and caught 75 balls, 800 yards and 7 touchdowns. Is like, yeah, that's 1 out of 55 guys. Like,
yeah, and don't get me wrong here, Watson and Doubs were 2 guys I wanted on the Bears last year in the draft. Like, those were 2 guys who I had circled of like they should go target these guys. But that doesn't change the fact that I don't think that it's just not safe.
Yeah.
You know, there's not much safety to this wide receiver room, especially once you look at the tight end room and realize that they have 2 rookies in there who are probably the best 2 tight ends in there. Aside Josiah DeGuara and Tyler Davis, you're talking 2nd round pick Luke Musgrave and 3rd round pick Tucker Kraft, who I was big on Tucker Kraft coming into the draft. Musgrave, he is freakishly fast for his size. I think that turns a lot of heads. I needed to see more on him on tape, but the potential sky high regardless, because he has that outrageous speed. Like, that's something you just bet on, which I understand that. But I think there's risk in that tight end room too, which is why I said with Love, like, they're saying either go do it or we're rebuilding this thing fast, because they are getting so many young guys snaps this year. And the O-line, this is a top 10 O-line in football.
Yeah, I mean,
top 5 maybe.
They have everything in place for the future except quarterback. So I think they're playing this beautifully, which sucks because I hate the Packers. So I really hope that he plays just good enough to fool everybody and then sucks for the future. And they go out and they try to put a team around him next year and he's just dog shit.
Yeah. I've got to get on my soapbox for a minute about the way the Packers build their O-line. It is just immaculate. It is outstanding the way they build this thing. Like, you draft David Bakhtiari, athletic, big, long arms, left tackle, right tackle versatility. You draft Zach Tom, can play any position on the offensive line, long enough arms, athletic. There's a formula here. Yosh Nijman, draft him, athletic, he has long arms, and he can play multiple positions on the O-line. By getting these guys who are versatile and athletic with length, they are giving these guys opportunities to grow into spots because they're not limited by a position, right? They're not like, oh, well, you can only play left, so we can't play at right tackle when the right tackle goes down because you're not good at it. They're going after guys who are going to create opportunities for themselves when players go down and be hungry to get that opportunity and have the athleticism and the length to match. It's just so well done. Like Elton Jenkins falls in that group. John Runyon falls in that group. All these guys could play multiple positions coming out of college. They all either had long arms or were like high RAS scores. Just a lot to like in the way they've built this O-line, and they've been doing it for years and years, and I'm jealous of it. I wish that the Bears had been building O-lines like this for the last 5 years, because the multiplicity in what they put on this O-line is just, it's outstanding. And it's very logical, and it's not that difficult to do, because there's guys who can play multiple positions in the mid rounds of every draft, and they're just betting on upside. I mean, sure, they miss on some of these guys. Like, there was a guy they drafted back in like 2016, I want to say, who in the second round, who never did much. He ended up playing on the Bears as a backup for a few years. Or they took Sean Ryan last year, got injured, didn't really play. Don't know what you have in him. So you're going to miss some, but like, they hit as much as they miss on them, which is impressive. I mean, that's a good, batting 500 is pretty darn good for this league.
Oh yeah. 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 Don't like this team, and hate praising them, but I remember for your bachelor party. No, it was Joseph's bachelor party a couple years ago. We were talking about this team, and we're like, oh, can't wait for Aaron Rodgers to leave, because as soon as they leave, we know Jordan Love's not good, and they'll never be able to find another quarterback in that or for that team. I don't want to walk in there and play for that team. And now, what is it? 3 years later, now we're sitting here like, man, if Jordan Love's good, like, we could have another decade long of misery, just hating the Packers together equally.
As long as Joe Barry sticks around, I'm not that worried about it. But like, if he leaves, then I start to get more worried.
Yeah.
So, and granted, I will say this about Joe Barry's defense. Like, I got the feeling scouting this defensive roster and what they did last year, that like, they are very much structured for knowing they have a quarterback who can gun it with the best of them and keep them in a boat race. And I wonder how that changes what they're calling this year, not knowing that anymore.
Yeah.
If they're going to have to be more conservative, more safe, more dedicated to stopping the run. Because this defense just did not care to stop the run the last few years. They just said, we have Aaron Rodgers. If you think you're going to beat Aaron Rodgers running the football, go ahead and try. But we're going to focus on making sure you can't throw the football. So that's going to have to change this year, I think, until Jordan Love proves that he's a legitimate threat if he does. But if he doesn't prove that he's a guy who can carry an offense on his back, this defense is going to have to change the way they play, which I think is good, because they are good for them, because they are too talented to be as bad as they were last year. Yeah.
No, I agree. So you want to hop into their schedule real quick?
Yeah, just sorry, I know we're pressed for time. Let's just touch on their D-line real quick before we move on. So Kenny Clark, Devontae Wyatt inside. They also grabbed Carl Brooks and Colby Wooden in the draft. I wasn't overly impressed with either of those guys, but I saw upside in both of them. So you have that going for you. I think there's some nice potential there.
I like Van Ness.
I think Devontae Wyatt's what?
I like
Van Ness. Yeah. Well, I'm calling him an edge here, but I bet Van Ness is going to play both inside outside. So there is versatility there in him too. And Van Ness is pretty, like, the shades between him and Rashawn Gary are actually really interesting. They were very similar prospects. But I think Devontae Wyatt's going to bust out some this year. I think he's just too talented to keep down. He didn't play a lot last year, which was weird. But you got to see more from him. You got to see more of him this year.
Did Van Ness have Harbaugh over for a sleepover and not leave his house for 3 days until he committed to Michigan?
No, but he should have.
Harbaugh missed out on that one.
And then on the edge, Rashawn Gary, Preston Smith, that is two very quality stars, plus Van Ness behind them. Kingsley Agbar is good depth. Justin Hollins is good depth. I really like this edge group, and paired with the interior group they got here, I think this is one of the most talented D lines in the NFL. Not to mention Brenton Cox, the UDFA they got. Guy would have been drafted probably in the top half of the draft if he wasn't just like red flags for off-field issues everywhere. He's super talented. If they can get his head straight, I think there's something there. But if not, I mean, it's a big question when you have a guy who had red flags like he did. And the secondary safety position's terrifying for them. Not going to lie. Yeah. But I said we'd move on. So
well, I have a question real quick. Did you understand my reference with Rashawn Gary and Harbaugh?
Oh yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I did. I got it. I remember Rashawn Gary had Harbaugh stayed over and watched Disney movies with him for like 3 days.
If you don't know, Rashawn Gary was the number 1 recruit coming out of high school, number 1 recruit in the country. He's supposed to go to Alabama. Harbaugh went over to his house first year at Michigan. Really hadn't landed anybody and as taken the job. And he stayed at Rashawn Gary's house for like 3 straight days and watched Disney movies with him and just, I guess, flirted with his mom and ate good food. And then they got the number 1 recruit in the nation.
No chicken.
And
didn't eat any chicken, I can tell you that.
Harbaugh don't eat chicken. But yeah, stayed at his house for 3 days, ended up landing him. He goes to Michigan, and then Michigan ends up with like the number 5 recruiting class in the nation. And that's basically the origin story of how Michigan is Michigan now, to where they're competing for national titles. And it's all because Harbaugh refused to leave Rashawn Gary's house for 3 days until he signed. So,
and because he doesn't need a scared bird.
Yeah. Nervous birds. No nervous birds.
No
nervous birds there. But okay, so we look at the schedule for Green Bay. 19th strength of schedule in the league. Early bye. Pretty young team, unproven quarterback. So you start the season at Chicago, at Atlanta, then New Orleans and Detroit. To me, this is an 0-4 start for them. I don't think they win at Chicago week 1. I think Atlanta has the skill set and the drive to beat them week 2. Then your first home game is against New Orleans, which I think is going to be tough with Derek Carr and company. And then I think you're playing the best team in the division after that, even if it is at home. I think this is 0-4 start for the Green Bay Packers.
I'm giving them a toss-up against New Orleans just because I think that matchup is going to be pretty tough for both sides. And then I'm giving them a win against the Raiders. And the other 3 I've got marked down as losses.
Okay. So Raiders were going to be in my neck, but I'll give them. I'll give them Raiders. I'll give them a 1-4 start there. I'll give them the Raiders, and then early bye week, week 6 bye week, and then you go to Denver. I think that's a loss. You have Minnesota at home. You have the Rams, and you have Pittsburgh. I think in the best of scenarios, you go 2-2 here. I'm seeing more 1-3 though. I think you lose at Denver. I think you lose to Minnesota, and I think you lose to Pittsburgh. You should be able to beat the Rams at home. Rams are probably the worst team in football, on paper at least. So I could see this 1-3, best case scenario 2-2, but I'm giving 1-3. So I'm going 1-4, 1-3 here. So I mean, I have them at 2-7 in the first.
I'm gonna give them a loss to Denver.
2-7 in the first.
They're gonna beat Minnesota. They're going to beat Minnesota at home.
See, I think Minnesota was frauds last year, but I think every single NFC team that we've previewed that has Minnesota on the schedule, you have Minnesota going 0-17. I don't think you've given Minnesota a single win so far.
No, I definitely have.
I don't think so.
Absolutely.
We have to go back and check the tapes.
Hey, we're going to get to Minnesota in a couple minutes, and we'll see. Like we'll see where I have.
Maybe when we get to Minnesota, obviously you have to give them wins when we get there.
Losing a game to Minnesota.
A game, okay, so 1-16.
Minnesota.
Every team
I don't remember every team that played them, but trust me, I do not have Minnesota losing.
We've done the whole AFC, and this is our 3rd division in the NFC. You may have given Minnesota 2 wins at this point.
I might have given them a lot of toss-ups. I'll give you that.
No, we got to go back and check the tapes. I don't think you've given them more than a win.
I I don't think so. I disagree. I mean, so I definitely didn't have the Rams or the Raiders beating them if they play them. They should play the Raiders. I didn't have the Raiders beating them.
Sure about that?
Yeah. I might have had it as a toss up. I didn't have them beaten.
We got to go back and check the tapes. Wind it back.
All right. You do that and get back to me. Let me know.
I'll go back and check. I'm going to make sure. I'm going to see how many wins you give Minnesota when we actually check their schedule after this. But so then after that, we have the Chargers, Detroit, Kansas City, Giants. I see this is another 1-3 stretch.
Yeah.
I don't know who they win and who they lose to. I can see them winning any of these games. I can see them losing all 4. So I'm just going to say 1-3.
I don't know, man.
Giants have top 5 coach in football, in my opinion.
For now.
Until he's not, all right?
Exactly. Not to say he won't be, but like, I'm gonna give it a toss up on the Giants. I gave him a loss to the Chargers, toss up Detroit, loss to KC.
All right, then we'll have them finishing out Tampa Bay, Carolina, Minnesota, Chicago. So I'm sure you're going to give them the Tampa Bay win. I'm sure you're going to give them Carolina win. I'm sure you're going to give them the Minnesota win. I'm sure you'll say Chicago's a toss-up.
No, they're not beating Minnesota in Minnesota.
Oh, look at you. You gave Minnesota 3 wins on the year. You got to beaten Las Vegas. You got to, oh, man. 3-14 for the Minnesota Kirk Cousins.
And then, man, we're talking the Packers here. Get out of here with the Kirk Cousins.
No, so I see a 2-2 stretch here, which I think they finished about 5-12, 6-11. I think they finished middle of the pack. I think they're over under at 7.5 is perfectly set. I think that's exactly where they finish, between 6 and 8 wins, in my opinion. I don't.
Yeah, I've got him at 7 wins.
If I'm touching the total, I'm going under, because I have to really fight. Like, if you're going to take it over, you want to be able to find at least 1.5 to 2 wins over what you see, and I just don't see this team getting to 9 wins. Which, if I don't see them getting to 9 wins, I'm taking under 7.5. But that might be my best bet here, because missing the playoffs at -200, I'm not taking. I think they're the worst team in the division. I'm not taking that at +420. So I think my best bet on this team might be under, only because I struggle to see them, with best case scenario, winning 9 games, which means they only have to lose 2 less than that.
Yeah, I'm with you. Under is probably the best bet here. And it's not like, I could definitely see them going over, but there's a lot of ifs here to me. Like, if Joe Barry changes up the defense, if Jordan Love works out, if he doesn't, I can see
Jared
like
Goff
you had
Hooker isn't good, if Justin Fields breaks his leg, if Kirk's cousin gets hurt and everybody in the division sucks. Like,
I mean, so where I was going was like, you had some guys with maturity questions in Quay Walker last year. Like, I do wonder why Devontae Wyatt didn't really play much last year. If he's like, if him and Quay Walker aren't bought into what they're doing, and Jordan Love isn't good, I could see this starts torpedo quickly. Not that I think it should, but I could see it happening, which is where, like, I think if you really want value, you go find an alternate under and take that.
Yeah, no, I agree. And then moving on to the Minnesota Vikings, correct?
Nope.
Oh, we're doing Minnesota last? I thought we saved the best for last.
No, we're really random with our order, actually.
Okay. Well, let's look at the Detroit Lions, the best team in the NFC this year. The odds-on favorite for the NFC North and what, in my opinion, could have the best record in football this year. We look at this offensive line, my opinion, top 5 offensive line in the league. And then you look
maybe top 2.
Yeah. And then you look at the wide receiver core. I think they have a top 3 to 4 wide receiver core in the league with Reynolds, Marvin Jones, St. Brown, and then you're getting Jamison Williams back after week 4. And then you look.
Oh, I thought it was 8. I thought he had 8 games.
Was it 8? I thought it was 4.
Is it only 4? I think it's 8.
Oh, if it's 8, then you're getting back week 9. Either way, you have plenty enough talent there until he gets back. And then you look at the running back room. I think David Montgomery is a very underrated signing for him, but I think Jahmyr Gibbs is the absolute elite of the elite for skill positions in this rookie class. I'm on record saying that I think Jahmyr Gibbs will have 2,000 scrimmage yards this year, so 1,400 yards rushing, 600 yards receiving. I think he has well over double-digit touchdowns. I wouldn't be surprised if he has 15-plus rushing and receiving combined. I think he's going to have an absolute monster season behind that O-line. I think Jared Goff is going to continue to be good, not great. I think he puts up probably 4,400 yards-ish passing the ball with a 2,000-yard running back, and maybe even David Montgomery is still in about 6 to 8 rushing touchdowns on top of that. I think this is going to be an explosive, high-scoring offense with a re-energized defense at the same time. Aiden Hutchinson coming into year 2. I absolutely love this team. I love their schedule. I love their draft. I love what they've added on the back end for their corners and safeties. I love everything about this team. I think they're going to go to the Super Bowl.
Okay. So on offense, I love Jahmyr Gibbs. I like Jahmyr Gibbs a lot. But this is a coaching staff that I'm scared is going to give David Montgomery way more touches than he deserves. He's been one of the least efficient backs in the NFL the last 3 years. He doesn't have the breakaway speed that you need when you're breaking tackles like that. He breaks a lot of tackles, and it's really fun and cool to watch, but it doesn't actually get you very far. It doesn't get you much more.
You're forgetting about the run he had against Green Bay.
Oh, it was great. It was incredible.
Yep.
But it doesn't happen very much that he gets yards
the funny thing,
after the contact.
The funny thing about that is he got caught on the 2 and didn't score. But
okay. I thought you were talking about the one where he broke 4 tackles.
No, he broke 4 tackles, went 77 yards, and got caught on the 2-yard line.
Okay, that's a different one. I had a different one in my head.
But I'm not too worried about that because I think DeAndre Swift had injury issues, and I think Jamal Williams was a proven commodity in the league. I think Jahmyr Gibbs is going to take over this backfield, and David Montgomery is going to be there solely to give him a break. I don't think everybody's looking at this situation like, oh, David Montgomery's gonna play the Jamal Williams role. The only reason why Jamal Williams played the role that he did is because he's a 10-year veteran and has 3 fumbles in his entire career and is an absolute beast on the goal line compared to a 3rd-year DeAndre Swift who couldn't stay healthy for more than 4 weeks at a time. I love DeAndre Swift, but if you watch that offense last year, DeAndre Swift was an absolute monster, and the only reason why Jamal Williams had as big a role as he did is because he couldn't stay healthy. So,
yeah, no, I mean that makes sense. I don't believe it till I see it. That's where I'm at with it. It might. I hope that one of my notes here is Gibbs is electric, should be the primary running back, but will he be? I
think he will be
for me, and I think he should be. But I'm worried that he's going to be pigeonholed into more of a receiver back role, more of a weapon, multi-tool weapon role, where it's split Alvin Kamara, Mark Ingram was, and I just don't think Monty's Mark Ingram, and I think that's going to not be good if that's what they decide to do.
Yeah, I don't think that's the case, but.
And I love Monty. Don't get me wrong. He took a lot of hits for the Bears. He plowed through a lot of tackles and left his heart on the field. But that doesn't make him faster than he is.
Right. So what about? Let me say one more thing about this team. They got rid of.
I got a lot more to say about this team.
They got rid of TJ Hawkinson last season, halfway through the season, to the Minnesota Vikings. And then they go out and get Laporta. I love this tight end that they brought in. He is one of my favorite tight ends in this draft. I think he fits in perfectly in this offense, where he's going to be quite possibly the fifth or sixth option in a lot of scenarios. I think this offense.
I mean, yeah,
this is the greatest show on turf.
We'll see. I mean, so Ben Johnson. I mean, he was outstanding for them last year, calling the offense. Like the way that they're. It's not the greatest show on turf because everything is dictated by the run game for them. But it's like, I understand what you're saying, though, like the innovation aspect of it, right? Like they are the most versatile run game in the NFL. They throw so many different gap concepts at you, and they can still succeed with zone concepts. And that's how they've gotten so much out of Goff. They have made it easier for him to be able to use play action, which by far his play action stats versus his non-play action stats are giant gap. There's a giant gap between the two. He had the most play action touchdowns in the NFL last year.
When you talk about Jared Goff, make sure you mention that he's a Super Bowl appearer.
All right, so there's a big difference between play action and non-play action for Super Bowl appearer Jared Goff.
There we go.
And Super Bowl appearer Jared Goff, he was able, the way Ben Johnson structured all this, he was able to get Super Bowl appearer Jared Goff chances at play action looks and play action concepts without actually having to turn his back. And so he could see when safeties rotated. Because for Super Bowl appearer Jared Goff, his biggest issue with the Rams, that whole downfall that Super Bowl appearer Jared Goff had, was really about the late rotation to safeties and defensive backs when Super Bowl appearer Jared Goff's back was turned out of under center play action. And the Detroit Lions have been so effective at, one, running out of shotgun, two, running gap concepts even under center, even when under center, that force the defenses to bring an extra man up on the line, that they're single high. They're not rotating like they used to, like they were with the two high safeties. They can't afford to keep two high safeties against Super Bowl appearer Jared Goff because this run game is too good. So that has created us looking at Super Bowl appearer Jared Goff like Super Bowl year Jared Goff again.
There we go.
And I'm really curious to see how defensive coordinators counter this, because this was new last year. You know, this was like brand new to the league. This was not stuff that was really a lot of tape on. So D coordinators have had a whole offseason to watch tape on Super Bowl appearer Jared Goff and think through how they can force him into doing the things that the Lions don't want Super Bowl appearer Jared Goff to be doing.
Yes, sir.
So I'm really curious to see how that counter comes in and how Super Bowl appearer Jared Goff does with it, and how Ben Johnson has answers for it. Did I do well there?
Absolutely. Yeah, putting some respect on the man's name finally. Like, if you want to sit here and tell me Super Bowl appearer Jared Goff is trash, like, tell me who you're a fan of and how many Super Bowls your quarterback has attended, because it's probably less than Super Bowl appearer
Jared Goff. Attended or appeared in?
Played in.
Kirk Cousins goes to the Super Bowl every year.
Hey. But when I look at this team, you look at this team from top to bottom. You look at the division. You look at this defense. CJ Gardner-Johnson, I think, was absolutely huge addition here. And then you look at the defensive line. Aiden Hutchinson's coming into year 2 right here. Had a monster season last year. And then you look at some of the guys they added. They added a off-the-ball linebacker at 18, which a lot of people looked at this Detroit Lions team going into the draft. They're like, oh, they have 2 high-round picks. What are they going to do? They wouldn't pick a running back and off-the-ball linebacker. A lot of people might look at that and say, what a waste. But I look at this like I look at the 2014 Cowboys, to where you're like, we have everything that we want and we're in win now mode. And obviously it didn't work out with the 2014 Cowboys. They just had the best season they've had in 25 years. And if they would have played Tony Romo in the playoffs, they would have been a Super Bowl team, but that's neither here nor there. And they took two guys, they took guys that would help them now rather than building for the future. And I think that's what the Detroit Lions did in this draft. They took two guys that could immediately step in and make an immediate impact on this team. And maybe 5 or 6 years down the road, you're going to look back on this draft and be like, wow, they took a linebacker and a running back at 12 and 18 with that team. But yeah, sometimes you just got to swing for the fences and go for broke. And I think this team is built to win now. And I think those are perfect picks given the situation.
Before we get too deep on the defense, can I rip off some thoughts on wide receiver, tight end, O-line?
Yeah, so wide receivers, top 5 in the league.
I mean, it might be. Amon-Ra St. Brown is awesome. 7th in yards per route run last year. But most of that was like 60% of his snaps did come in the slot. He did produce enough outside where you're like, okay, he can play both. But I'm not sure he's your X receiver. He's your outside ball winner either, which is where a guy like Marvin Jones comes in big. But Marvin Jones is 33 years old now, and he had some real drop-offs.
You're almost 33. Are you telling me you can't run routes in the NFL?
Not as fast as I could when I was 28.
Same, brother.
But really what I've seen is like Marvin Jones isn't the deep threat anymore. He can be that ball winner for you. He can still go up and get the football and just be a good, reliable route runner. But Josh Reynolds can be a deep threat, but he is a little bit limited in his game. He's probably better suited as a number 4 receiver. Jameson Williams is going to be so key when he comes back for this offense, and how he comes back, because he really didn't show a lot last year.
Three games
it's really interesting to watch.
He had a long touchdown, and didn't really show much outside of that. We were hoping for a big bounce back this year, and then lose him for half the season. So that absolutely sucks.
And then,
but hopefully the team is good enough to where Jameson Williams has 5 to 7 games and starts hitting his groove week 16, 17, 18, 19, going into the playoffs, to where it's a different story. But that's best case scenario. When I look at this roster, I almost don't even include Jameson Williams, which would essentially just be an added bonus at this point.
Yeah, I think that's how you have to look at him. But like, he is what can take this offense, in my opinion, this year from
good to legendary.
Take the counter punch that the NFL is going to give you. I don't think you're going to be quite what you were at the end of last year. But Jameson Williams is what could put you above what you were last year if he comes back and just like hits the ground running.
Agreed.
Now, a tight end, I would be more worried about this if they cared more about a tight end as the receiving threat. Sam Laporta is a good receiving threat. I really like him in the draft. One of the most well-rounded tight ends in the draft, but he's still a rookie tight end, and they tend to be really bad.
Yeah, rookie tight
So
ends.
until proven that he is the anomaly, they tend to not be good. Now they still have Brock Wright, who was a good blocker last year, can catch a little dump off a block to a peel off route, stuff like that. Same with Shane Zylstra. James Mitchell will be interesting to watch because he showed some potential last year in limited time, and I think he's a guy who might end up being like the guy at tight end for them this year. And he was a high upside guy coming out of college, so I'm interested to see what he does. And this O-line, Decker Sewell is probably one of the best bookend combos in the league. They have good depth behind him with Jermaine Ifedi and Matt Nelson. Like, both guys have played a solid amount of snaps in the NFL. And also, if you lose the left tackle, Sewell can jump over to the left. Glasgow is a guard center, but
no, I'm just saying depth-wise, he's decided to be a backup.
Yeah, I don't know who's going to start. I mean, I think Glasgow might start over Vitae, but Vitae missed all last year with an injury. Um, but you have that depth there where with Glasgow that you're not that worried if Vitae gets hurt. Ragnow, probably the second best center in the NFL after Jason Kelsey, and Jonah
I
Jackson
don't
is
know.
just an animal of a run blocker.
Creed Humphrey's way up there.
Oh, so Frank Ragnow might be third after Creed. You're right. But yes, this offense, I mean, it's loaded up. They have a lot of talent. The big
Their
question for
offense,
me is, like I said, with Ben Johnson and Jared Goff and how they answer what the league
throws. Their offense, even down to the quarterback position, might be that they might have the most depth on offense out of any team in the league, and I don't think it's close because I think Hendon Hooker, once healthy, could step into this offense and, if not improve it, keep things status quo. Day one.
Yeah, I mean, I think Ben Johnson's good enough at his job to do that, but it's also I need to see how he takes the counterpunch from the NFL, who's been figuring out all offseason how to stop this thing and how to effectively, basically, to stop it. You need to stop the run without committing more bodies to stopping the run against arguably the best run blocking O-line in football.
On top of adding, in my opinion, the best vision running back that I've seen come the best read blocking running back. I don't know how to. What I'm saying about Jahmyr Gibbs,
well, and especially
Jahmyr Gibbs reads the field probably better than any college running back I've seen in a long time. So you get a mediocre offensive line in front of a guy like Jahmyr Gibbs to where he doesn't need much and he can see what's happening and hit the hole. And you put an elite line in front of him and he's going to be absolutely filthy.
Well, and here's the thing with it. Like, you're talking about a running back who has really good vision behind an O-line who can execute gap run schemes really well. So you're not just talking 20-yard plays. You're talking home runs. Like, when you're executing
and nobody catching Jahmyr Gibbs.
You are home run hunting. That's what you're going for.
You're home run hunting with an offense where you have Marvin Jones, Josh Reynolds, and Amon-Ra St. Brown at wide receiver, and you're going for home runs in the run game. That's how good this team is.
Now, one interesting thing, this offense last year it was only like 2 games or something, or like it was a few halves, but so the sample size is small. This offense really struggled when Amon-Ra St. Brown wasn't there. So if he goes down, it could take.
But he was also gone.
I think it's a theory.
He was also gone the same time as the Philadelphia running back now. What name? Running
Swift.
back, DeAndre Swift. They were both out at the same time, which sucks. Jamal Williams wasn't the every down running back they needed, and they never found anybody to fill that DeAndre Swift role. And then Amon-Ra St. Brown goes down, and DJ Shark wasn't the guy that they thought he would be. I think Marvin Jones is the high volume reception guy that they could use in the scenario that Amon-Ra St. Brown goes down again, and Josh Reynolds can fill the other role pretty well. And then I think David Montgomery can absolutely take the load of the offense running the ball. Efficient or not behind that offensive line, I think he can get the job done to where they're way more well equipped this year to deal with a nagging injury or a 3 to 4 week injury to where they weren't last year. I think they made every right move.
They also have your boy Mo Ibrahim.
Yeah, Muhammad Ibrahim, I love. I actually have drafted him in every single fantasy or dynasty league because there's a very good possibility that he outperforms David Montgomery, and whether or not he gets the snaps this year could force Monty out at the end of the season to where he shares the backfield with Jahmyr Gibbs next year, and then maybe eventually sees more and more action. But yeah, I absolutely love Muhammad Ibrahim in this offense, and if you're in a deep league, he's absolutely worth grabbing and stashing.
So on the D line, and this is the reason why I am like a bit more skeptical on the lines. It really comes down to the D line. Like I like Aleem McNeil a lot. Aleem McNeil lost a pretty good amount of weight the last year or two and has become more pass rusher than run stuffer, even though he was drafted as more of a run stuffer. Like, so they feel a little light up the middle. Like, Aleem McNeil's lighter now. They're getting Levi Muzarike back this year, 295 pounds. Isaiah Buggs, he's a lighter defensive tackle, not much of a run. They don't have much mass up the middle. And as you look at linebacker too and safety, you find a lot of guys who are just not that good at stopping the run, which is just caused me to pause a little bit. Now, the construction of this D-line is a little weird, like, because they drafted Broderick Martin in the 3rd round, who, I'll be honest, I watched a ton of D-line for this draft. I couldn't find tape on Broderick Martin, so I had to go off what I found from other people as far as, like, talking about his tape. From what I heard, he can stuff the run, but there are plays where it's just like, man, that guy shouldn't be getting handled like that. So he's too big to be handled like that. So I do worry that your main run stuffer that you have here is a rookie who was at Western Kentucky last year and was up and down a lot of the time at Western Kentucky, which isn't playing the hardest competition. Their edge room is boom or bust, in my opinion. Like, I mean, Hutchinson's going to be good no matter what. And they have, 4 different guys who've had 8 sack seasons in their career on this list of edge rushers, and they run 7-8 deep. But a lot of these guys have missed a lot of time in recent years. Like, you're either counting on Zach Pascal to improve a lot in the offseason, which is possible, or Charles Harris to come back from missing most of last year good and be good, or Julian Okwara missed most of last year with injuries, or Romeo Okwara, who's only played 300 snaps in the last 2 seasons. Like, there's a lot of injury risk in this edge room. There's also a lot of talent. So, like, if stuff goes right here, they could be filthy, disgusting edge rotation.
Yeah.
But there's just a ton of risk with the injury history here too. And James Houston was an animal last year, but he's still only 225 pounds. As an edge rusher, is what he's listed as, at least. He's not going to be playing every down. He's very clearly a specialty player who's playing very specific downs. And I don't know if now that his name's out there and people who are going to be planning for him, that sack number might come back down.
So what do you think about these 3 corners they added between Mosley, CJ Gardner-Johnson, and Sutton?
I love the CJ Gardner-Johnson addition.
Same.
I think his versatility paired with Brian Branch's versatility is going to be a lot of fun on the back end. I mean, Cameron Sutton, I like the addition. I think Cameron Sutton's a better CB2 than CB1 though. And that's kind of where I get tied up here. It's like they added a lot at cornerback. They also lost a lot at cornerback. And I don't feel like they have a A1 cornerback on this team.
Yeah,
I
think they would have been better suited keeping Jeff Okudah there until they had to move him. But I would have liked to see the scenario where,
or Mike Hughes.
Yeah, but did they trade Mike Hughes?
I mean, he was a slot guy, I believe. He left in free agency,
okay.
I believe.
So I'm pretty sure they traded Okudah.
Yeah.
Okay, so I would have liked to see him actually get beat out and then move him, or play so good where they could have got more for him. I think because I'm pretty sure they got a 4th for him, either a 3rd or 4th. It definitely wasn't a 2nd.
Yeah.
But I would have either, like, at that point where he's been trending up the last couple of years after spending a top 5 pick on him, like, just roll the dice, and if he gets better, you're going to get more for him, or you can move on from one of these other guys, or he's not as good, and maybe instead of a 3rd, you get a 5th. But I mean, I just felt like they jumped ship a little bit too early when they had that much depth at the cornerback position. When he's already on the roster, he's on a rookie deal. Just keep him around for a little bit longer and make him compete, and maybe you get the best out of him, because the the best out of Jeff Okuda is the best corner on this team if he lives up to
Yeah.
potential.
Yeah. And I'm skeptical of Emmanuel Mosley being considered a starter. And maybe Will Harris is the starter. Emmanuel Mosley's really, really good, but he's also missed 37 games in his 5-year career.
Yeah.
So like that is and Will Harris is fine depth, but and Jerry Jacobs is okay, but I wish they had more there. Like that's the thought. I think that and the interior D line are the two things that I'm like. I look at this roster and I like a lot of it, but those are the two spots that I'm like I'm worried about those two spots.
I do love the Brian Branch pick at safety too, though. I mean,
yeah. I mean, he's a nickel corner safety. I mean, they're going to be able to do some fun stuff with Gardner Johnson and him because they're both so versatile in what they can do.
Yeah, no, there's a lot to like on this team. We can go to the schedule now if you want.
Yeah.
All right. So we have the 22nd ranked strength of schedule here. Middle of the season bye. So go to Kansas City week 1. And then you have Seattle coming in, Atlanta coming in at Green Bay. It's one of the toughest schedules you can ask for to start the season if you have high hopes to win a lot of games in this league.
Yeah. Yeah, that is
it's
pretty friendly.
As much as I like this team, I think this is a 2-2 start for them.
Really? I mean, I'm thinking they're 3-1.
Well, I mean, Seattle's not going to be easy. Atlanta's not going to be easy. I think they win at Green Bay, but it's still at Green Bay at the same time. And I don't think they beat Kansas City week 1.
I feel good about where they're starting. I see 3-1. They're not going to beat KC, but they'll beat Seattle, Atlanta, Green Bay.
Yeah, so you're higher on them I am already, and I'm sitting here saying they're the best team in the NFC.
Hey,
but then we'll go to you got Carolina coming in. You go to Tampa Bay. You go to Baltimore, and you go to the Vegas Raiders. This is the 3-1 stretch I see. I think they can handle business with Carolina coming in. Then they can go to Tampa Bay and handle business. I think Baltimore's a toss-up. And then I think they can handle business at home at the Raiders before the bye week.
I see them beating Carolina, beating Tampa, losing to Baltimore, beating the Raiders.
Okay. So I have them at 6-2 or 6-3. And
actually, I'm gonna change Seattle to a toss-up. The more I think about it, I jumped the gun on that.
Okay. So I had 2-2, 3-1. So I have 5-3.
I've got 5-2 in a toss-up.
5-2 in a toss-up. And then coming off the bye, we have going to the Chargers, at home to Chicago, at home to Green Bay, at home to Chicago, at home to Green Bay, and then going to New Orleans. I think this is their first 4-0 stretch. I think coming off the bye, they can take care of business against the Chargers. I think Chargers are a good team, but you get the bye week after the Raiders, and I think that's a winnable game. And then I think they beat Chicago, Green Bay, both at home. Q doesn't think so, obviously.
Nope. Mini bye.
And then at New Orleans, I think that's a 4-0 stretch for the boys.
See, I got them. Where did I put? I think I put Chargers as toss-up, loss to Chicago, win against Green Bay, toss-up against New Orleans.
Woo! Okay. So at this point, I have them at. I have them at 9-3, and you have them at like 6-6,
7.5 and 4.5.
All right, so 9-3 going into the final stretch here of a lot of road games at the end of the season.
Yeah, their schedule is stacked at the back.
So at Chicago, Denver at home, at Minnesota, at Dallas, and then Minnesota at home for the last 5. I think they go 3-2 here. and finish the season 12-5. I don't know how they get 3-2, but I think they get 3 wins between Chicago, Denver, Minnesota, Dallas, and Minnesota. I'm giving them 3 wins there.
Give me 10-7.
10-7 at 9.5. You gotta be looking your chops for that under, because everybody always overestimates every team. If you're giving them 10 wins, that means you have to hammer the under.
No, I'm not hammering the under.
I'm just saying. Good. I'm just as far as betting goes, if you look at a team and you're like they're a 9-win team, like I could see 9 wins for them, or 10 wins in your scenario, and the total's 9.5. You hammer the under because you always get.
No, I didn't. But that's a different thing than what I'm saying.
always give them
This
more
is a
wins than
prediction. This isn't what I could see. I could see 12 wins, but my prediction is 10.
I can see 14 wins, but I think they're 1-12. But the schedule doesn't break for them that great.
No, it's actually pretty rough.
I'm taking
the way it all goes down.
if I'm betting this team, I'm taking Super Bowl at plus 2,500. I think they're the best team in the NFC. I think they make the playoffs and they roll.
Man, these values are brutal, man.
Yeah, I mean at plus 2,500. That's not the best odds, but if you're forcing me to,
No, I just mean like for division or for like it's just. I mean, I don't know. Like,
take the under.
I don't like plus 1,000 for NFC champs. I'd like to see that number higher.
Take the under.
But
That's your 10 wins.
It might be the best bet.
Not the best bet, but you can take it. You can lose your money. I'll win money with Super Bowl champions at plus 2,500.
I can't take him for Super Bowl.
I might put $10,000 on it.
I think division plus 120. I think that's the best.
I'll win $250,000 on a $10,000 bet. Super Bowl champs.
Yeah, good luck. I'm rooting for you, man.
You wouldn't root for me, the Detroit Lions. You might, because you're that good of a friend. If I actually put that much money on it, you.
That's what I was gonna say. I was like, if you had that much money on it, I would absolutely root for it.
No,
shaving points to the moon.
I'll probably put $100 on it at most to win 2,500. But if I did put 10 grand on it, I would hope you would be rooting so hard for me.
Absolutely.
All right. Well, let's go to the most likable man in football right now. If you've been watching the show Quarterback, I'm pretty sure Kirk Cousins is like the most beloved man in football right now with this new documentary coming out. And all I have to say is, what did you think he was going to be? Like, we knew Kirk Cousins was going to be on this show for a year. Yeah. And it's like, what did you expect? I mean, I like him. I mean, he seems like the perfect neighbor. He seems like the best guy in the world. He seems genuine. He seems down to earth. But people are forgetting, this is the bag man. Nobody's made more money in the NFL than Kirk Cousins. He's the fucking bag man.
Football Business Hall of Fame.
Yeah. Yeah, we all want to sit there and be like, oh, I like Kirk Cousins. Like, he's genuine. He's down to earth. He's this, he's that. He absolutely is. But this man knows business better than anybody.
Stone cold killer, man.
And all I have to say to all the people that are falling in love with Kirk Cousins, saying like, oh man, like I want the Vikings to do well. It's like, where have you been the past 12 years? Because everything I've seen in quarterback is exactly what I would expect from Kirk Cousins. Not saying that's a bad thing.
Jefferson.
Not saying that's a bad thing.
Justin Jefferson list his top 5 QBs the other day.
No. Was Kirk Cousins on the list?
He didn't. No, he wasn't.
Doesn't surprise me. I was watching the show with my wife, and my wife was like, oh, I love Kirk Cousins. And I was like, yeah, it's easy to love Kirk Cousins when you have the best wide receiver in the NFL on your team.
Not gonna lie, his wife killed me after the playoff loss in that show.
I haven't got
And
that
she's just
far
like,
yet,
oh,
but
he's like talking about the loss of the playoffs and like all this like
the
emotion
Giants?
around it. She's like, yeah, and then she's like, oh, it's garbage night.
I haven't seen. We haven't watched that far.
I had to rewind that and show my wife.
So,
Just to
I
be
don't-
like, that's what you do
I don't watch.
when I talk football.
I don't watch Netflix, and like a month ago, me and my wife were going through bills, and we're like, where can we save money? Like, we're looking for a bigger house. We have a child. We're like trying to save money where we can. And I was like, well, let's just cancel Netflix. I was like, we never watch it. And so we canceled it. And literally the day it canceled was 2 days after quarterback came out. And we were 2 days deep into watching it. So we're like on episode 6. And now we're in a financial conundrum of like, do we really want to pay for a whole nother month of Netflix to watch the final 3 episodes? And every single night, like, we're on the verge of doing it, but we haven't done it yet. So I've only seen like the first 6 episodes of Netflix or of Quarterback.
It ends well. I will say, but so that show actually made me realize something about Kirk. Like, he works so hard at being in that. Like, you didn't see the other two guys work like he does.
Yeah.
On the mental side of the game.
I think that was
and on
intentional.
being the best that they can probably, but like, he works so hard to do the right thing all the time.
To be a little bit better than league average. Like that, like,
not even that. To be by the book. To be like, this is what I'm supposed to do here.
In my opinion, it's showing everybody that talks shit on the internet. It's like, this is what it takes for an elite athlete who was the best. Like, you look at their hometown, you look at their home state. He's the best to come from where they come. He's the elite of the elite. And this is what it takes for the elite of the elite to be league average. Like, I think it's trying to specify, because it's Peyton Manning who's producing it. I think it's Peyton Manning intentionally being like, oh, you think Kirk Cousins is just an average quarterback? Like, let me see you do Kirk Cousins' job for a month and put up 4,000 yards, 32 touchdowns, and 11 picks. I think that was intentional by Peyton Manning to be like, this is one of the better quarterbacks in the league. This is a consensus top 8 to 15 quarterback in the league. One of the best football players in the world. He's the best player where he comes from. He's one of the best players from his college. He's one of the best players in the league. And this is his daily schedule to be mediocre, because there's 9 quarterbacks better than him.
Yeah, I mean, so absolutely. Like, I had that same thought, but like, also what it made me realize more from like why do things happen to Kirk Cousins the way they do on the football field? It's like, he does so much to always do the correct thing, right? The thing that he's coached to do.
Yeah.
He's hardwired at this point to do certain things. And I think defenses know that. I think that defenses sit there saying that they know that he's going to do the right thing, which makes the right thing the wrong thing. In moments.
They know he's not going to improvise.
Yeah. It ultimately comes down to, when you take away what he's supposed to do, it just can't end well. I wish that he had more mobility, more of a threat somewhere else in his arsenal, because I think he'd be one of the best QBs in the NFL, like top 5, top 3 QB in the NFL if he could just make plays outside his structure. But like, because of his skill set, he needs to stay within structure. So when structure goes wrong and you throw chaos at him, it ends in chaos.
Yeah. But
It just the show just gave me more perspective on that, I guess is what I'm
See, I
saying.
disagree. I mean, I looked at it and I saw exactly what I expected to see from Kirk Cousins, which is a guy that does his due diligence, dives into the playbook, does things the right way, does things the way the coach wants him to do. And that's why he gets to sign guaranteed contract after guaranteed contract after guaranteed contract, because every coach that works with him knows that he's going to do what that coach wants him to do. And as a fan, you may look at that and be like, hey, we need to see some Patty Mahomes, we need to see some Josh Allen, we need to see some Lamar Jackson, like do some improvisation here, like things aren't going the right way. But at the same time, if you don't have the talent to be Patrick Mahomes, if you don't have the talent to be Josh Allen, if you don't have the talent to be Lamar Jackson, the best you can do is what you can do. And I think Kirk Cousins might be the best quarterback in the NFL at squeezing every little bit of talent he has out of himself to be the best quarterback he can be. And if you're a coach in the NFL, what better player to coach than a guy that knows his limitations, that knows he's going to squeeze every little bit of that orange to get that orange juice?
Yeah, no, I mean, I'm not saying I didn't expect to see what I saw. It was just like actually seeing it is different than thinking about it.
Oh,
You know, like
absolutely.
actually seeing it, like it gave me more perspective on it of like why it's such an issue in certain moments.
Well, I mean,
Like I've been
I
thought
don't.
about, I've said it before, but like I seeing it you felt it harder. You felt it more.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's just one of those things where it's like he has obvious limitations. I mean, he's not the most athletic guy in the world. He doesn't have the strongest arm. He doesn't have all these things. But you you look at this team last year, and I thought they were a bunch of frauds, and they proved it the first week in the playoffs. But you look at the reconstruction of this team going into the season. I love adding Marcus Davenport to that defensive line. I think that's absolutely huge for him. Um, and then I think one of the most underrated um, picks in the entire draft. I've been yelling at the clouds ever since it happened. If you're in a dynasty league and you're not taking Jordan Addison as the first rookie wide receiver off the board, you're crazy. I love Jackson Smith and Jigba coming into the draft, but you look at where players land, and if you're a fantasy player, if you're in a dynasty league, or if you're just a casual NFL fan wondering what rookie's going to do what, I think Jordan Addison landed himself in the best situation possible with Adam Thielen walking out the door, being opposite of the best wide receiver in the league. I expect Jordan Addison to be in the running for Rookie of the Year, and I don't think anybody has any eyes on that whatsoever. I love Jordan Addison in this offense. And then on top of that, with Alexander Madison coming on as the RB1 now that who the running back, Dalvin Cook just walked out the door. And then you got Chandler coming in. I mean, I love this offense. I think everything they did in the offseason made the team better. Yeah, they may have been frauds last year. They may have won a lot of games they weren't supposed to win. But I think the team got better, and I think this is a dangerous team. A dangerous team that has confidence, and that's one of the scariest teams in the NFL. Is a team that's better than they think they are, but at the same time, they may not think they're that good.
So I am really torn on Jordan Addison. Like, I like his film. I thought he looked like a quality receiver. Maybe not a number one receiver in the league, but like a quality number two, number 1B type option. But he is in a very rough demographic athletically and physically. Sub 6 foot wide receivers under 180 pounds who are average athletes, he'll be the first to succeed in a long time if he succeeds. It's
But
just,
that Justin
it's
Jefferson is opposite of him.
I mean, yeah, no, that's why I'm so torn too. It's like I liked his film, and he's opposite Justin freaking Jefferson. So like, if anyone's gonna succeed out of that group,
Biletnikoff
it's
winner.
gonna be that guy. But like, also, there are so many things tearing you multiple ways, right? Biletnikoff winner, huge green flag. His size, athleticism, huge red flag. And like, but opposite Justin Jefferson, like I'm just torn on it. I can't decide if I like him in
KJ
this.
Osborne
I can't decide if I just. Yeah, KJ Osborne put up some really nice numbers last year.
I love
Like
KJ
from an
Osborne.
efficiency standpoint, and with bigger target share, he could get even better. But he is probably limited to the slot, and that's the other thing here that concerns me.
You don't think they'll put Addison in the slot?
Well, that's what I'm getting at. Both are slot guys.
Yeah, but Osborne has time and experience in the league. And you still have Justin Jefferson there. And let's not forget TJ Hawkinson added to this offense midway through last
all I'm
season.
saying is you're running the risk of either one of them taking a drop off by going outside. I don't know who it is. I don't know which one it is. 75% of Osborne's yards last year came from the slot.
Yeah. But if you put Addison in the slot and he has a stellar year, then if you can get 500 yards out of Osborne on the outside, that's still a win.
It's still a win, but it's the assumption that he has to be better than what Osborne was last year out of the slot.
Addison in the slot is much better than Osborne in the slot, in my opinion. And
yeah, I'm just saying
Osborne
he has to be, though, by that logic.
You're also forgetting a full offseason of TJ Hawkinson, who kind of tore it up for him last year at the end of the season.
Hawkinson did well for him. I've always thought he was closer to mid than elite, but
I've been on the opposite of you. I think he's on the. I mean, it's hard to judge tight ends. I've always thought he was like the upper echelon of tight end talent. You've always he came out of the same draft as the dude that went
Noah
to Denver.
Fant better.
Yeah, and I've looked much better in that argument so far.
I still like Noah Fant better, but
maybe it's Noah
all
Fant's
about
year.
the offense you're in. It's all about the offense you're in. He's Seattle for Noah Fant. That doesn't make any sense.
Yeah,
they need a tight end to block.
10 years from now, when TJ Hawkinson is arguing for the Hall of Fame and Noah Fant's arguing for a starting job, we'll come back to it.
Hey, I'll still have the same opinion.
I know you will. That's why I love you. But did you look at the defense? Not.
Can I touch O-line first?
Absolutely. I like their O-line. I don't love it.
Yeah, it's very there's stuff to really like here. Brian O'Neill and Christian Darrisaw, you really like. I really like the depth behind them with Oli Udo and Blake Brandel. I don't feel as strong about that as do Udo, but I'm not sure Udo can play on the left side. So you need Brandel to be there too. But I really like Udo on the right side as a reserve. So that does worry me a little at the backup left tackle, where Darrisaw has had some issues staying on the field at times. But he's been really I think Darrisaw turned a corner last year. He is really good. Garrett Bradbury, he's a good zone blocker. He's undersized, athletic. He's what you need in this run scheme at center. He's fine, but I mean, I don't trust him a whole lot as a pass blocker. Ingram, to the right of him, he's okay. I don't feel confident about him, but he's fine. And then Ezra Cleveland, I feel like Cleveland started to really show something as a run blocker last year. In pass pro, I don't trust him. This team, at the end of the day, I don't think they're going to run a ton of true pass sets either way. So the pass protection isn't something I'm too worried about, but the pass protection up the middle is what I do worry about in this offense.
Yeah, and man, I think the defense has a lot to be desired here, but at the same time, I have a lot of faith in that offensive line with Alexander Madison, TJ Hawkinson, Justin Jefferson, Jordan Addison, KJ Osborne. I think they can get it done. We can get to their schedule real quick. And
on the defense, I just want to say This D line's got a lot of beef. I don't know if
A lot of
they
beef.
got a lot of pass rushers, but they got a lot of beef up the middle.
I have a
They're gonna be-
question
This is a
about
team
their
that
D
wants
line.
to beat Detroit. That's the way I'm seeing this D line. They're saying we're gonna beat Detroit. Like that's what they're.
I have a
gunning
question about
for.
their D line. Is Danielle Hunter still good?
Yeah, Daniil Hunter he was still really good last year.
Okay. A lot of people in Minnesota don't seem to like him anymore.
He might be getting traded. That might be part of it. I think that he wants new contracts. He's not paid very much.
Well, I saw this last year. But maybe
so going into
ongoing
last
issue.
year, he had a lot of health issues. Like he missed a lot of 2 years before it, but like last year he still played well.
I admittedly don't
78%
watch a
of
whole lot of
snaps.
Minnesota Vikings games, but I just remember going into last year, everybody was like talking about Danielle Hunter like he didn't need to be in Minnesota anymore. And I was like, man, I thought he was a beast. And then I'm just looking at your PFF stats right here, and I saw 95%. I was like, oh,
Dude.
is Danielle Hunter so good?
So yeah, I mean he had a good year last year. 2.1% sack percentage, got a pressure at 13%. League average was 10.8. Crushed it on true pass sets. So when they knew it was a pass, it was like he was going to get pressure. And he played good run defense. So I mean he looked good. And there's risk in this edge room between Hunter's injury history and Davenport's injury history. Davenport only played 40% of the snaps last year. I mean, availability has always been a big issue for him. It's never been the production. It's always been the availability, or at least the pressure production. The sack production has never matched it. But if you're getting pressure, I mean, that's good. And really, I mean, you look around this defense, this might be one of the best run defenses in the NFL. Like almost every player on this defense is an above average run defender. I don't know if they're going to be able to stop the pass, but they can stop the run. Cornerback room is extremely thin. I'm very worried about it on this defense. Byron Murphy played 50% of the snaps last year, missed half the season with a neck injury, I believe it was, neck or back. And then a Caleb Evans and Andrew Booth Jr. are all they got there. Andrew Booth Jr., former second-round pick. I mean, he's going to be the starter across from him, I imagine, across from Murphy. But it's thin. There's not a lot proven here. Byron Murphy is proven, but like once you throw a back injury into something, you start to get worried. I think Andrew Booth is going to do well in this defense because you are talking about Brian Flores here, who's going to run a lot of man coverage. Booth is long, athletic. He should do well in this scheme, but I'm not sure Murphy will. Byron Murphy is actually kind of a weird signing for them. He's not been great in man coverage in his career, and that's largely what Flores wants his guys to do is man coverage or man concepts within zones. So I'm not sure how that's going to play out. Harrison Smith appeared to lose a step last year, I thought. A lot of his stats back that up. And outside of that, I mean, I don't trust their safety room a whole lot. Josh Metellus showed some nice stuff, but he only played 20% of the snaps last year. They got Lewis Cine coming back, Lewis Cine, however you say it. But coming back from a broken leg that needed surgery, but he wasn't even starting the first 4 games when he was healthy last year. So I have questions about his development there too. The pass defense is really where I have a lot of questions on this roster.
Yeah. I mean, they were very fraudulent last year. I think they're a better team this year going into next year than they were last year.
I'm not sure. Like, I think their defense really took a step back. I think, like I said, they're going to be able to play the run well, but there's not much here coverage wise that you trust.
Yeah. I can see that. But we'll go into their schedule here and late bye, which I think is the worst for this team.
You're right. I might have them losing like every game. Looking at this schedule.
So I think they went Tampa Bay, and then they go to Philly. They have Los Angeles Chargers coming in, and they go to Carolina. I think that's 2-2 stretch for them.
I'm giving Tampa a toss-up because I think Baker is going to air the ball the hell out, and I don't know about this coverage unit.
Yeah.
I think Baker's going to come out on fire, though. Like, I mean, he might dwindle after, but like I think he's just going to come out red hot.
Yeah, I mean, it could be. Then I think Kansas City's lost at Chicago. I think that's lost, but then you have San Francisco, which is also a loss. But going to Green Bay, I think that's a win.
I think I gave that to Green Bay.
You probably did. You gave every game to the opposite team.
I'll call Atlanta a toss-up.
No, I'm almost positive you said Atlanta was going to win that game when we talked about it.
Probably. I'm making it a toss-up here.
I'm almost positive you said New Orleans was going to win this game when we talked about it. I'm almost positive you said Denver was going to win this game when we talked about it. And I know for a fact you said Chicago was going to win this game. So you have this team being like 2-9 at this point in the season?
Man, how about I go check your receipts? How about that?
Hey, go check my receipts. Please do. I don't think I had them this bad. I mean, I think they're a 500 team at the bye.
I don't know if they're a 500 team at the bye. This is a brutal schedule.
You got to win. I don't know. You got to win in like 3 games of the season. It doesn't get any easier after the bye either. We got Detroit twice,
New Orleans
Green Bay, Cincinnati, and Las Vegas.
Call New Orleans a toss-up.
Okay, what do you have them at the bye? So you got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. You have 12 games before the bye. You have a week 13 bye. 12 games into the season. What do you have them? Because I don't see them winning a game after the bye.
Oh, maybe the Raiders. I gotta get there first. Hang on.
Maybe the Raiders. I'll be right back. I'll let you calculate.
Okay. Well, now I gotta talk then.
Talk through it.
I can say I really don't think they're going into Denver and winning. So I've got them at 1 win, 6 losses, 3 toss-ups right now. I've got them losing to Tampa, losing to Philly, losing to the Chargers, toss-up against Carolina, losing to the Chiefs, beating the Bears, losing to the Niners. We got toss-up at Green Bay, toss-up at Atlanta, and toss-up New Orleans. So I've got 3-7. No, wait. So that's 9, 10, 2, 3, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So I got 2 more games. So at Denver, I might give them a loss. Against Chicago, give that toss up. So I've got them 4-8. 4-8 going into the bye.
4-8 going into the bye.
Yep.
And then you have the Raiders, Cincinnati, Detroit, Green Bay, Detroit. I think that's a 1-4 stretch for them.
Let's see. I've got them beating Green Bay. I had them splitting that.
Okay. I'm assuming you have them beating the Raiders.
Yeah, I do have them beating the Raiders. I don't remember if I had Detroit in Minnesota as a toss-up or not. Let's call it a toss-up. A lot of toss-ups.
Yeah. I mean, so I have this team finishing like 8-9, 9-8.
Yeah, I'm 6-11.
So you give them 6 wins?
I gave them 6 toss-ups and 3 wins.
So
that's 6-11.
Yeah. Well, we end up being about the same spot. I think this is underwritten all over it.
Yeah.
I do like this team. I do like the potential. I think if everything goes right for this team and everything else goes wrong for everybody else, they could be a double-digit win team. But we'll just have to see it play out. So,
yeah, that's a brutal schedule right there.
very brutal schedule. But if I'm taking anything on this team, I'm probably taking under 8.5 wins. I think that's just way too high. I don't think they win the division. I don't love playoffs at plus 120, so I'm taking the under here.
Yeah, no, I'm under all the way. That's the bet I see.
So that's the NFC North. Detroit Lions, the best team in the NFC. 2 weeks we talk NFC East, and we get to talk my boys, the Philadelphia Eagles.
Let's get it.
Most fraudulent team in NFL history. Do you not agree?
No, they're too talented to be that fraudulent.
Are they talented?
Yeah, extremely.
We will see. Join in 2 weeks and find out if they actually are.
All right. Adios.
Adios. Hey, before you leave, let us know who's going to win the NFC North. Make sure you like and subscribe. And before all else, don't sleep on the Texans. CJ Stroud, boys. CJ Stroud.